This is the D6 generation with your hosts, Craig Gallant.
You're on! If you're getting any compensation, it's not charity!
Russ Wakeland. You put me on a boat with frickin' dragons attacking me and whatnot? Now we're talking. And Neil Fawcett in the third chair.
Life is just a ball of pewter figures.
With contributions from Total Fangirl.
Vampires do not sparkle.
And our loyal listeners.
Are you crazy? That's like 400 hours of gamer nonsense.
Welcome to another edition of Rapid Fire, the roundtable discussion of all things gaming, coming out with the speed of a thin master model mold pumped full of catalyzer. Today's edition is brought to you by Game Salute. Visit Game Salute at Origins, over 1,800 square feet, featuring independent design studios. Join the fun at Columbus, Ohio, May 30th through June 3rd. I'm Geekly McNerdigan, your host. Today, as always, our panelists are Russ Rayum Wakeland and Neil Onophytus Fawcett, Grand Overlord of Resin and Fun Development at Spartan Games. Let's begin. Issue number 1. Cause and effect, also written as cause effect or cause effect, refers to the philosophical concept of causality in which an action or event will produce a certain response to the action in the form of another event. In common usage, causality is also the relationship between a set of factors, causes, and a phenomenon, the effect. Anything that affects an effect is a factor of that effect. A direct factor is a factor that affects an effect directly, that is, without intervening factors. Intervening factors are sometimes called intermediate factors. The connection between a cause or causes and an effect or effects in this way can also be referred to as a causal nexus. Question: if the effect was a tape measure being hurled across the room, what was the cause? Francis Bacon Russ.
Defeating your opponent with a sneaky move.
Niccolo Machiavelli Neil.
That hurt my head.
Wrong! It was a moment that will go down in history. A certain space combat mega battle, a certain bribery offered to take a shot at a teammate, a certain shot being taken. I love the memory. Issue number 2. In kinematics, the speed of an object is the magnitude of its velocity. The rate of change of its position is thus a scalar quantity. The average speed of an object in an interval of time is the distance traveled by the object divided by the duration of the interval. This instantaneous speed is the limit of the average speed as the duration of the time interval approaches. Question: if a brush travels down a raised detail 1 inch long in the span of 0.062 seconds, traveling at the speed of said brush while maintaining acceptable control, how many golden demons can dance on the head of a 0-0 detail brush? Henri Russo Russ.
I'd like to call the question irrelevant and moot.
Patrick Nagel Neal.
Down with him.
All right, obviously you guys aren't playing the game this evening. Well, that's fine. Golden demons, by the way, are big. They're heavy. They're full of resin. They'd crush a poor 0-0 brush. Mine in particular is extremely heavy when well-suited to use as a bludgeoning weapon or perhaps stabbing, and you're taking the fun right out of my evening. Issue number 3. A Spartan is a person from the Greek...
Can I interject? Sorry.
Okay.
What's a golden demon?
It's a statue. A Spartan is a person from the Greek city Sparta or the ancient Greek city-state of the same name. In the latter context, the term Spartan, in its most technical sense, refers to a member of the Spartiate caste, and under some usages also encompasses the class of the Mathakis, residents of Sparta who were free but did not enjoy full political rights. Question: it was from the Spartiates that the Iphors, or ministers, were chosen to rule with the kings of Sparta. How many Iphors were there at any given time? Laconic Wit Wakeland.
6.5.
Ferris Fawcett.
Many.
Well, that all depends, I guess, on your definition of many, but I'm going to go with wrong. It's 5.
I was close.
Less than, lots.
I was close.
Yeah, Russ was close, and Neil is well-oiled. Issue number 4. In military science...
That's not fair. I protest.
In military science, suppressive fire is a fire that degrades the performance of a target below the level needed to fulfill its mission. Suppression is usually only effective for the duration of the fire. Suppressive fire is not always a direct form of fire towards targets. It can be an effective visual and audible distraction. It is one of 3 types of fire support, which is defined by NATO as the application of fire coordinated with the maneuvers of forces to destroy, neutralize, or suppress the enemy. Question. Given that suppressive fire often depends upon the psychology of the targeted unit for effectiveness, which of the following mechanics would best represent this on the gaming table? A. Units receiving debilitating effects each time they're shot at. B. Units receiving debilitating effects at each time they are hit. C. Units rolling a morale check after a certain damage point. Or D. Players playing Rochambeau every time a unit is hit. Richard Haldane Russ.
I like D.
Horatio Kitchener-Neal.
I want to go with E, which basically means when I get overruled by my management.
Unfortunately, gentlemen, the answer actually was E, although that's not what E was. E was when you remove a model, it gets crushed beneath the opponent's boot, thus affecting the player's morale and forcing him to be more cautious as the game goes on. Although that was a trick question, I'm afraid, both by the rules of the game, you are both still wrong. That's it for now. Thanks for listening, and good night.
This episode of the D6 Generation is brought to you by GameSalute.com. Check out gaming news or find out what the new hotness is on Springboard. GameSalute.com. And by Lone Wolf Development. Take your game to the next level.
And the War Store, bringing the war to your door since 1999, and that is for a decade or more.
And by Audible. Try the service, get a free book, and support the show. All by visiting audibletrial.com/D6G.
And by Geek Nation Tours. Rise up and join the Geek Nation, touring the world at geeknationtours.com.
Hello!
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, and welcome to episode 104 of the D6 Generation. I'm Russ Wakelin.
I'm Craig Gallant.
I'm Neil.
Hey, Neil. Welcome, Neil Fawcett from Spartan Games. How you doing, Neil? So happy to have you on the show today.
Thanks, guys. Good to be here.
Can't wait to chat with you about all kinds of stuff. In fact, Craig, what are we talking with Neil about on today's show?
Well, today, Russ, we're going to talk about miniature production and how you do miniature production and the various different ways that it's done. And Neil's actually going to weigh in with some of his expertise on production in general and, of course, resin in particular. And then we're going to talk about, it's been a while, we're going to do a mulling mechanics, emulating realistic time flow in miniature games.
Right.
Russ came up with that title.
Emulating realistic time flow. That just sounds cool. Right?
It does.
I guess so.
It does. It sounds like something Doctor Who would be involved with.
It does. So that'd be excellent.
I just wish you told me about that before I'd have gone home.
Go to sleep. Take a nap
Well,
or something.
that's good.
Good. So
No. Oh, okay.
before we get all of that, we should get to our announcements. And first of all, we always like to put our errors up front in the show. If we make a mistake, I like to put it right out there and just say so.
Is this where the actuallys are coming in?
Yes. So it's funny. I know the show's getting larger because of the magnitude of the actuallys we get. So, for example, a couple episodes ago, or last episode, we talked about how we liked Dust Warfare being an army-size game. And then we got some emails and comments in the forum saying, well, actually, it's not really an army-scale game because army would imply several battalions and you need hundreds and hundreds of miniatures, and that's not really army scale. So you're really incorrect. It's more like maybe company scale. Right.
I think they said platoon.
Or platoon, right, or whatever they, yeah.
And
exactly.
if you're lucky, you're playing a company.
Right. So, and that's to be expected. But
Can I interject?
yes. Do you agree with the actuallys, or are you?
No. Well, I mean, clearly it's difficult for me to disagree with any of the good people. But at the end of the day, surely when you've got something that's completely made up, which a lot of these things are, your definition of an army or whether it's a company or platoon is utterly irrelevant. Surely.
I think you're probably right there, especially when it's fantasy. You're right; it's totally up the wall.
It's a game and made up.
Right.
There is no denying that.
And I had the same conversation in the office just the other day when we were working on a new game. So it was an interesting sort of like conversation piece because one person's definition was X, and we all sat there going, "Well, this isn't real."
Yeah, I love when you get into discussions about that orc's weapon is just not realistic.
I have no idea. What's an orc?
Where do you go from that comment?
No, I was at a war game show once where I watched a conversation take place between two people at war games, where they were arguing what colour an orc was. Hello. I was also at a war game show where I watched a conversation take place between a war gamer mocking a game that had been put on by somebody that was incredible, where there must have been, I don't know, 400 Napoleonic cavalry pieces, and they were mocking the colour of the cuffs that they think somebody had got wrong. So I don't know, sometimes we get things wrong.
I know. And so what's funny is, now I got Will actually last time, though, on something that I was actually wrong about. Arguably wrong.
Like
I know.
hugely wrong?
I've been wrong. I know I've been wrong. I can't believe it myself. But anyway, no, seriously, I mentioned, we were talking last time about the proliferation of board games into mainstream stuff. And I'd mentioned that I'd read an article on Penny Arcade. And actually, I'd read the article on Geek News at MTV.com, so geek-news.mtv.com. And the reason I know I goofed this up is because Matt Morgan, the author of the piece, tweeted me. It's like, hey, Russ just credited me with a Penny Arcade article. I'll take that as a compliment because I love the writer over there. So I was like, oh,
Really?
Sorry, Matt. So I wanted to correct this little issue. And I think I'm kind of excited that actually folks who write for MTV are actually listening to our show. I was pretty flattered by that.
MTV?
Yeah, geek news at MTV.com. Yeah,
I mean, I need to stop harassing MTV. I don't think I can do that.
you can't. Well, just the Geek News
I'm
portion.
sure, Matt, that MTV does good things, and I'm sure that you're the vanguard of those good
part.
things.
Just the Geek News part, you know.
There you go.
Man's got to eat. He's got to earn for somebody.
I'd like to say that I'm quite shocked that you don't know the difference between a geek and a penny. And really, I'm not quite sure I can actually converse you any longer.
It is confusing. So I was just flattered and excited that folks over there listening to us. So sorry about that, Matt. So if you want to see all the great articles that Matt writes and the folks at MTV right over there, check out geek-news.mtv.com. And they had that great article on Barnes & Noble buyers and how they decide whether or not to add a game to Barnes & Noble. It's kind of neat.
It just to interject, was that like a big plug?
Well, I gave them a plug because I screwed up. So that's why I wanted to make sure I gave them a plug.
He gave them a plug last time. He gave the wrong people a plug last time.
Right. So I wanted to make sure I credited the article to the right source. As a former journalist, you might be familiar with that process. Right. So that's my actually for the situation. Now, also, one other announcement we have, Craig. What the heck is going on with Gen Con?
Well, Gen Con, we finally got all of our info all set and ready to go. And we know where we're going to be, and we know how long it's going to go, and we know what we're going to do. And we'll tell you some of those details right now. There are only 80 seats, which means that you kind of want to get there early, because last time I think we may have had somewhere around 70 people show up, and it was a 100-person room. Yeah. So they were like, okay, well, they don't need a 100-person room now. And we've been hearing, first we've got the Geek Nation Tours guys are all coming, and we've got a whole bunch of people that have never gone before that we've heard from. So I think it's going to be bigger than last year. And if memory serves, there were only 10 extra seats from last year. So make sure you get those tickets. Every year so far, we've been able to just let anybody in, whether you had tickets or not.
It might be tight this year.
It might be tight.
So what you want to do is go to, now it wasn't up on the site, but now it is. If you go to gencon.com and go to the event registration section there, look up D6 Generation, you'll find us, and sign up. And it's going to be Friday at noon. It's an hour and a half long, and we don't want to spoil the play mob about what it's about, except we can say that we are working with a game designer to make it extra cool.
We are bringing in a world-class game design team.
Only 5 degrees of separation between these people and anyone else on the planet. I've said it before. I'll say it again. That's my hint.
Yeah. That's your big thing, and I don't know how common that is. That everybody's like, "Oh my god, I know who that is."
I will see.
Okay, we'll see.
All right.
Who's the game designer, Charlemagne?
Well, it's funny you should mention that.
Okay.
So, also, the other announcement we have, of course, is
I was being serious.
No,
No, okay.
I was not.
Okay, right. Okay, back to Russ.
Thank you, Neil.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming to my show.
All right. So the other thing we should talk about is the Lost Chapters. We just had book 33 went up, and we decided to discuss how to paint models quickly, or speed painting.
Painting. We've done it here and there, little bits and pieces.
To that?
What's that?
I have a really good answer to that.
What's your answer?
That?
Pay someone.
Pay someone. Yeah. That is a good trick if you can swing it. Yes, exactly.
The intersection between poor and not a lot of time, however, is speed painting on your own.
Right. So, but I think it's a hopefully you'll enjoy that episode. We went through and we talked about how we get our models up to table ready with the least amount of work possible. So hopefully you'll find it helpful.
In fact. Russ actually goes over his how to paint a model in 10 minutes, 20-minute long video.
That's right, a 20-minute video on how to paint a model in 10 minutes. That's the title. And also, don't forget to check out our new iOS and Android apps, which are both free, and a great and easy way to listen to the Lost Chapters as well as the main show. And if you want more information about subscribing to the Lost Chapters, just head over to our website and click the little pile of books on the right-hand side, and it'll tell you all about that.
Right. And remember that if you were a subscriber before the changeover and you haven't received an email about changing it over and you don't know what's going on and you haven't been able to get the Lost Chapters, you have to contact us, and not me, Russ will be able to help you.
info@the d6generation.com.
That's right.
And what's the time
Please
now?
don't email me. I don't know.
Don't email Neil.
Yeah, don't email
Unless
me.
you have a question about small boats, because he's really good at those questions, right?
He is.
He is good. So now, what's the time for, Craig?
Right about now, it's probably time for Achievements in Gaming.
Indeed, it is. And Achievements in Gaming is brought to us by, this week, Island Fortress Taskmaster. Use convicts and laborers to build a fortress on an unforgiving island. Pre-order today at frostforgegames.com. And so, Neil, we like to... Neil,
Little peek behind the curtain
that
there.
was awesome.
I'm sorry. I'm still reeling from the guy who stuck on a well.
So, Neil, what games have you been playing lately? Get any gaming time in lately?
A little bit, actually. Lately I've been working on we got some new games under development, so I've been working on some new stuff. We've got an interesting league going on in the office at the moment with Uncharted Seas, where it's quite fun. I've been kind of destroying everybody with my iron dwarfs, but obviously, clearly, I'm going to tell you it's a combination of I've been playing my own stuff and basically work on a new project. So, yeah, I don't get to play as much as many games as I'd like these days, but that's what I've been doing.
Good. So, how's your Uncharted League going? Your dwarves dominating your opponents there?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to embarrass Ben in the office, but I basically utterly destroyed him many times, I believe I think the word I was using was humiliation. I mean, again, I don't want to embarrass the guy. And then there was kind of so I'm doing quite well at the moment. Julian is playing his Dragon Lords, and again, I don't want to humiliate Martin, but I believe he got actually hammered by Julian.
Nice.
Wow.
So my favourite word here might be humiliation. I'm not sure yet.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Now,
We're doing okay.
So is Julian the boss's pet? Is that what I'm hearing? I'm kind of hearing that.
I think Julian will tell you that I'm his pet. So I'm not really sure. I'm kind of I sort of just arrive and annoy people for a while.
Okay.
Now, is this just like a ladder league, or is it actually a campaign with a?
It's a ladder league, basically.
Oh, cool.
So it's going pretty well, and the guys are having huge fun with it. It's sort of it's a good stress relief. You kind of. We've been doing a lot of lunch times and normally on like a Wednesday, because basically I think the guys arrive on a Monday. By Wednesday, they kind of play the game so it stops them killing me.
Nice.
Which I particularly like. My children, they love it, because it basically means I get to go home alive on a Thursday.
Which is nice.
That's good.
Very
That's
good.
Which is good. So it's been great fun. What happened? I think we were working on some new stuff for Uncharted Season. The guys got they kind of got really pumped to paint up some of the new models and things. So it was cool. It's been really fun.
Oh, they are sweet. I've been working on one of those new Orc Tower ships, and they're just awesome. Awesome stuff. So, Craig, how about you? What have you been playing?
Well, let's see. I had your brother and Pete came over last weekend, and we played Lords of Waterdeep again, which is awesome. That game continues to be one of my favorites. Pull it out whenever I get a chance. And it's funny because Pete won, which is... Oh, no, your brother won, but Pete almost... I didn't even come close.
Oh, dear.
So then
you lost, basically.
You lost.
I did. I lost hardcore.
I believe the term you're looking for is loser.
Actually, the term I'm looking for is humiliated, but Neil used it so often in the last little
fair enough.
segment that I
Right.
didn't want to overuse it.
Right.
Okay, I'll come up with a new one. Utterly destroyed.
Yeah, I was utterly destroyed. I was.
Fair enough.
Fair enough.
And then I played. Then we played Quarriors, which is awesome because your brother had not played Quarriors, and neither had Pete, and they both really loved it. It's a fast game, and it was fun. And I beat them that time, so I was okay.
Did you cheat?
I did not cheat, and I did humiliate and utterly destroy them both.
Nice.
And then, of course, we have been. I did not cheat.
Okay. Maybe not.
No, I did not.
Perhaps you should have.
And then, why? I won.
Well, it would have been a more, you know.
No, I didn't need it to be any bigger.
It sounds to me like you cheated.
I think so too. I think you just want to admit it. You're just trying to.
Yeah.
So anyway, they were newbies. They were easy meat
I
for
see.
my cheating.
Burnt hand teaches best. I see how it is.
Yeah. Who knows anything about that, Russ?
I don't know what you're talking about.
I invite the listeners to imagine learning racquetball at the hands of a person who believes that the burned hand teaches best, because that was fun.
He's never going to let that go, Neil. Never.
No, I'm not. I'm begging you, please, Russ, let's just set up a volley so I can learn the basics. Okay. Bam! Oh, you lose a point. Bam! Oh, you lose another point.
It's not my fault the game's all about placement. It's not.
No, it's not.
I'm still here.
Oh, sorry, Neil.
And whatever.
All
Okay,
right.
and then speaking of Neil, I played 2 games of Uncharted Seas over the last couple of weeks also. So that was a lot of fun. Playing for the Month in the Uncharted Seas campaign that you can go to the Spartan Games website and read all about.
Nice.
You'll hear more about that in a minute.
That was a massive plug. It warmed my heart.
Well, more of that coming your way.
To keep the guests happy.
Yeah.
It's been a very busy month, so I'm going to milk it for all it's worth.
Yeah.
Russ, what about you? What have you been playing?
Well, speaking of humiliation and defeat, I lost horribly in Dust Warfare to Ryan.
Really? And now, was
yes.
it like one of the iconic power pieces that he used against you?
No, actually, this time he took out the giant tank.
Uh-oh.
And he came in with lots and lots and lots of. I've been hitting him with a very elite heavy armor, Allied Force, and he plays Allied also. So this time he brought in a lot of little walkers and lots and lots of infantry.
Really? He flooded you with infantry?
He just stayed
guys?
back, and I came at him, and I came at him. I couldn't put it together. He just really
nice.
pulled me apart. Yeah, he did a good job. So now I have to rethink my battle plan, which is always part of the fun. That's part of the fun. I got to look at
How
that.
many light walkers did he take?
I want to say 3.
And what were the configurations? 3. Who owns 3 light walkers?
Oh, I have 3 also. He had
Do you
I have
really?
4. No, I have-
3 light walkers?
No, light. I'm sorry, medium and light.
Medium.
Mixed,
Right.
mixed
medium.
component.
Oh, a medium and light mix. Gotcha.
He had the machine gun light.
Oh,
one,
did he? The light one with the quad,
which flanked me and took out my
50s?
command squads. Yeah, that was ugly. And then he had the we both had the indirect fire, the rain one, right? That shoots the
steel rain.
steel rain, and then we each had a regular pounder. So.
Oh, cool.
Yep. So that was a great game, though. I'm looking forward to getting a vengeance on Ryan this week, hopefully.
Oh, well, that's good.
Also taught a new group to play Rune Wars. So I had myself and 3 new Rune War players. And it was funny. We were kind of off to a slow start, and everybody was kind of intimidated by all the parts. We had everything laid out there. And about 15 minutes into it, they're all like, this is pretty awesome. So we had a great time with Chuck, Mike, and Keith, and myself. Had a great game. And we definitely want to bring that up more often so everybody can keep the rules in their head and play some more. It's a fantastic game. And finally, I played Fish Eat Fish with my family. Great game for the daughters. My daughters and my wife both all love that game. So we played that, and they are quite vicious with the fishes. And I also lost that as well twice because they always
That's not good.
Well, they all gang up on me. They always team up with Mom. It's really,
It's girls against the boys in the
It is.
Wingman house, and the boy is hurt. His feelings are bruised.
So you know what I've noticed, though? I've noticed all those battle reports you're writing up there for the Spartan Game website. They look like they're on some great tables and great terrain. Is that all happening at Myriad Games?
That is all happening at Myriad Games. It's odd that you should mention that. When we play at Myriad Games, he's got he has like a library. What are those called? Periodic, like those newspaper rolls. But he's got like a whole shelf of just rolls of different table toppers, so you can get water or grass or sand or all kinds of cool stuff. And then I don't know who, but somebody made him a lot of really cool water terrain. And then I bring in my own, so there's all kinds of terrain. And we've got just all kinds of terrain, and it's nice, and it's except for last night, it's usually really nice and air conditioned. It was really hot last night. But yeah, and they're friendly, professional people there to help you all the time. And of course, if you're a member, you've got all of these perks. Like I just walk up and I say, "Hi, I would like to use some of my points for a soda," or as they say at Myriad Games, frosty beverage.
Do you talk like that when you go to the counter?
I do. You have to actually. Okay. You cannot redeem your points at the counter unless you say, "Hi, I would like a frosty beverage." You have to say it just like that.
Okay.
You know, listening to you guys, I know. I mean, I know I'm a geek, but like you guys make me look like normal.
Normal, yeah. Well,
that's what we're here for.
That's the job. You know, like Jerry Springer. People watch Jerry Springer because they realize, no matter how bad my life is, it's better than that guy.
Which is why we're eventually going to incorporate this into our show.
That's what this is all about.
Now, I like the frosty beverage bit because I'm now going to go back to the office and make people get a pay rise from me if they say to me, "I'd like a frosty pay rise." In a really like a Craig voice.
Well, you'd have to.
You have to, right?
I don't think it's fair.
It's only fair, right? Fair is fair. I think that's right.
Just don't tell them it was my fault.
Now, what about modeling?
I've changed my mind. I want to make them all dressed up like dystopian was characters.
That'd be great. We want pictures though.
There should be at least one day a year where they have to.
Right. It should be. You guys don't have Halloween over there, do you?
We did discuss having a dressing up box in the office.
You should.
See.
And you should take pictures and put them on your blog. That'd be great.
That would shut the company down really quickly.
That'd be awesome. So, what about modeling, Neil? Have you done any painting or anything lately, or do you still farm all that out to your?
No. I do. I was doing some painting the other day. Actually, I was building some terrain the other day. I sort of it's now turned into a bit of kind of a therapy for me.
Oh, nice.
So when it gets to the point where it's been a little bit, kind of crazy or intense or busy, I sort of basically go and slap some glue on a board and stick some sand on it and dry brush it and basically make some stuff.
So what kind of things have you been making?
Well, I just said stuff.
Stuff. Oh, fair enough then. We don't want to drill too deep there.
Asking for it to resemble something.
I mean, I can tell you what stuff I was making, but that'd be like stuff. And then more stuff.
So is it green stuff or brown stuff? Green stuff, I guess, right? Probably.
It was
or blue stuff.
The latest thing I made, I was making some trenches, kind of 15 mil and 28 mil trenches, and then I made a few islands, and I had some fun with some asteroids, but the first go went horribly wrong, so I decided that George Lucas wasn't going to hire me, but then I sort of, Ben came along and he sort of showed me the error of my ways. I'm still trying to evaluate whether actually him showing the boss of the company the error of my ways was like good or bad.
Maybe the error of his ways, right?
Yeah, but it's probably his review coming up or something, so I'll let him know soon.
Nice. Awesome.
So quite a bit. I haven't painted a lot of mini. I was painting some 28mm models the other day, so that was quite jolly.
Nice.
Kind of odds and sods, really.
Good.
I mean, back to my original thing, stuff,
right? Well, thank you for
clarifying.
clarifying.
That he can't talk about.
Thanks for clarifying the stuff. Right, exactly. We got asteroids in there, so that's always exciting.
We do know they're asteroids.
I love to hear about Firestorm Armada or something like that.
Right. And other things that we won't draw attention to.
We won't. Right.
I really like asteroids. Actually, that was a fantastic game.
It was a fantastic game.
Oh, that's what he's actually been doing.
He's been
modeling up little asteroid cabinets, 28 millimeter asteroid cabinets.
Right.
How cool would that be?
That would be awesome.
He's doing a modern combat game that takes place in an arcade.
Right.
From
somewhere in the lockup, I've actually got some of the old asteroid motherboards. So yeah, that's probably quite doable.
Well, there you are.
Yeah, why am I not surprised?
But that's because I'm old.
Right. Craig, what have you been doing for modeling?
Well, for modeling, I have just been finishing the project that I've been working on for the past month, which is about 1,200 points of Thaneris elves for Uncharted Seas. Mm-hmm. And you could see them at spartangames.co.uk.
Wow.
Just saying.
Just could be there or someplace like it.
I would like somebody to go and look at this stuff. I've been working really hard.
Actually, Craig, I'm really sorry. I didn't quite hear that. Could you repeat that again?
Oh, sure. It's at Spartan.
No. Please don't. No. And by the way, it's Thaneras. If you're going to do it, you're going to paint them. Craig, if you're going to paint them, get it right.
Wait,
I just got
Wow.
I just got actually'd on the podcast.
You did. So Neil, what is
By the guy who owns the company.
what is the correct way to pronunciate the elves' name?
Pronunciate?
Yeah.
Well, Thaneras.
Feneras?
Thaneras, yeah.
Feneras.
Feneras.
Yeah, well, how do you say it?
Thaneras. I like Feneras better, but I don't see it. Okay, I can do it.
Yeah.
I can do it. No problem.
There you go.
Is that one of those kind of tomato?
I was going to
things?
say, is it like aluminum or aluminium, as they say, right?
Feneras. It'll take a while.
No, it's only you guys who say that. The rest of the world says it right.
They do. How do they pronounce schedule?
I have no idea what one of those is.
Good.
Anyway, so that's what I've been doing. Russ, what about you?
Well, I haven't done much modeling because I've been distracted by this silly little video game called Diablo. More about that in a minute. But I did, however, get my painting video, my 20-minute video on how to paint a model in 10 minutes. Talk about plugs. I've said it 3 times on this episode. I put it over on russrant.com as well. So those of you who don't want to be messing around on the Facebook page, it's over there also. So that's my modeling. What about other stuff? So, Neil, any other geeky activities? You see any good movies or read any good geeky books or anything lately?
Yeah, I think I'm the only person on the planet who liked John Carter, you know?
We love
you're
John
not the
Carter.
only person.
Yeah, we're huge fans of that movie. Did you like it? What was your favorite parts, or what did you like about it?
Oh, I liked all of it. It's really funny because it's one of those things that kind of, to me, it was. I was saying to somebody in the office today. When I was a child, it was one of the first books that I read as a child. When I said child, I mean obviously I was probably 8 or 9 or something like that. And one of my uncles gave me a first edition.
Wow.
I kind of fell in love with the whole style. I kind of love that sort of the reading material. So it to me it was something I've been looking forward to. I kind of guess why some people didn't get it. I suppose I'm like it struggled in the movies, but no, I really enjoyed it. So for me that movie was pretty cool. I watched Hugo the other night. One of my painters, Sally, was round and we sat and we watched Hugo and basically both wish we hadn't.
Yeah, I watched the first half of that and fell asleep.
Yeah, I've heard similar.
Although we did come to an agreement that the Sacha Baron Cohen character looks like Julian in the office, so I'm going to paint a mustache on him, which I'm not quite convinced Julian will enjoy, but we thought that was fun, but he won't.
Uh-huh.
What else did I watch? I watched the second Sherlock Holmes movie. I had been really, really slow in getting to this, but really enjoyed it. Great fun.
Oh, yeah. Those are good.
Yeah, I love those.
Oh, and I watched the last episode, sort of the series finale of Castle. Big fan of Castle, like Castle.
Good.
Like Nathan Fillion.
Were you pleased with the finale? No spoilers, but were you pleased with the season finale?
Yeah, I'm not sure what they're going to do in the next episode, but yeah, it's one of those things where I think they just had to kind of get on with it. It's one of those things where if they hadn't done what they did, everybody would have said, "Oh Lord, why am I watching this now?"
Right.
So it kind of happens, but I mean, at least it wasn't as soppy as what they did in Bones, because that was just tragic.
Right.
But
good. Good. I'm glad you like John Carter. Craig and I are both huge fans of the film, and we were sad that it got such bad reviews and disappointed at the box office, because I would love to see more of that kind of movie. So I'm glad that some folks out there liked it in addition to us.
It was good. I liked it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm probably the only person in England.
Wow.
Yeah.
It didn't do well here either, so it did not do well in America either. So
It lost Disney over $300 million.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money.
There will not be a sequel.
No, there will not be a sequel.
All I'd like to say to that is thanks, Craig, for pointing out that 300 million was a lot of money.
Wow.
What's going
Yeah.
on?
What did I do to you? Seriously.
I don't know. What? It is.
Anyway. Hey, Russ, what else have you done?
Okay, good. I'm glad so I've been listening to, on Audible, The Stand by Stephen King. Now, I've read this book a long time ago, and I haven't, and I love Audible, and it finally just came out. So The Stand was originally written in 1978, published in 78, and then there was a new, sort of the complete version of The Stand was published in 1990, and the complete audio version, unabridged, has never been available until recently, and Audible just picked it up back in February, and I got it, and it's only one credit, so for it's a huge book, 47 hours to listen to.
And it's narrated by him.
No, 47 hours of book. Well, if you've seen The Stand, it is a very, very thick book.
It's like 1,200 pages,
yes.
isn't it?
Who's reading it? Who's
the narrator is not Stephen King. The narrator is let me look it up here real quick. But what I find really interesting about listening to it again now, first of all, it's a fantastic story, and it is one of the great pieces of American literature. But what I like about it is, what's really, the anachronisms really freak me out now, because listening to the book, it was written in 1978, right? But the time period of the story is 1990. So to hear all the anachronisms, like everybody talks like it's the 70s, like, hey man, which, it's like that kind of like hippie talk, but it's 1990 and you're thinking it's not like that at all. And like, there's some little anachronisms, like, people using typewriters instead of computers and stuff like that because of when it was written, and it just sort of tickles your brain, like that's not really right. But it's still, the story is so powerful and great that I'm really enjoying that. So
that's good.
The great thing about Audible, we should mention. Oh, sorry, the narrator is Grover Gardner is the narrator.
That sounds familiar.
He does a great job. He's done a lot of books.
Well, it's good that it wasn't Stephen King, because it would have been like listening to a book that was being read by a guy chewing a burger.
A lot of people don't like Stephen King's reading style. I have listened to a couple of his books by him. He doesn't turn me off too much, but I know some people really don't care for him. He has a kind of a funny voice, that's for sure. So Audible, if you want to check out Audible and get a free credit and get a book like The Stand for free, listen to all 47 hours of it when you're driving around to work or painting models or whatever, head on over to the D6 Generation and click on the Audible link. We will hook you up with a free 30-day trial and a free credits. And the book is yours to keep forever, even if you decide you don't want to subscribe. But I think you will, because Audible is fantastic, as Craig will be talking about more in a minute.
Actually, you know who Grover Gardner did? Grover Gardner did all of the Miles Vorkosigan
There you go.
books.
That's why it's
That's why I recognize.
So if you like his
name.
voice there, you'll like him also in The Stand. He does a great job.
Yeah, he did
voices.
a great job.
Yeah, he does. As for
I just worked out that actually I only have an 8-minute drive to the office, so that would take me a long time.
That would take you a long
That would
time.
take you
It would.
years.
It is handy to listen to while you're making terrain and painting stuff, though.
Especially if you're only making stuff.
Stuff, right? Might get boring after a while, but listening to a book might help.
I need to concentrate on the stuff.
The stuff. Speaking of stuff, my girls have gotten into 2 new video games. Well, one is they've gotten into, one of them I'm into. They are really into Minecraft. So Minecraft just came out for the Xbox. Now,
please, let's not talk about Minecraft. My little boy, my 10-year-old boy is hooked on
Is he loving it? See, don't they love it? It's basically video game Legos. Is really what it is, right?
I get this from 6 o'clock in the morning till he goes to bed.
I know we got to kick him off too.
And he shows me what he builds, and I love the fact that he's into this. But it's like he'll show me this thing. And they go, "Look, I trapped a sheep in here." Like, that's really cool.
No, it's great.
And then I built this, and then they came along. They unbuilt my thing that I built, and then I'll be like, "That's really cool. I need to get some breakfast now. My toast is burning."
Yeah, my girls love it because it's sort of this funky game. It's 8-bit graphics. The graphics aren't like fancy or anything, but basically you build things out of stuff. So you dig in the ground, get some dirt. You can then use the dirt to build a building. And my daughters are exactly the same way. Neil, they'll come to me and say, "Dad, you got to check this out. I just built a 17-story condominium. Check out all the rooms. I got the floors 7 through 16 are for rent. The top floor is where Kit lives. The bottom floor is mine. But look at this. I got a 16-foot wide balcony over here." It's like they're just like building this. I'm like, oh my! I'm looking at this building. It's like huge, and they're planting trees and plants and taming wolves and all kinds of craziness. It's
See, I had a go at this, and I built this huge house, and apparently it got foreclosed because the economy was rubbish. I didn't know what was going on.
That sounds like a fun game.
It is pretty interesting.
It was really stimulating.
It's the kind of game that you could just sink an afternoon into if you're not careful. But my girls really enjoy it.
On a month of your life.
Or yes, exactly. Now, speaking of a game you can sink a month of your life into, also just released is Diablo 3. It actually came out about a week ago now.
I like the original game. That was a good game.
Yeah, and have you tried the new one yet, Neil? Or
no, I don't get my son to play sort of video games these days, but I've heard it's very good. But no, I love the original.
It is fantastic, and I was a bigger fan of the original also. So I picked up the third one, and I have to apologize to my brother because he and a friend of ours, Joe, had sworn off. They've been big WoW, World of Warcraft addicts for many, many years. My brother hasn't played WoW now in over 6 months. He's totally kicked the habit.
Cold turkey.
Done. And
Can you speak normal to people now?
Yeah, he's like living the dream. He's actually out there in the sun mowing lawns and things. And
That's
so
amazing. He's white anymore.
I know, but I totally just screwed him over because I went over to his house and I said, "Look, John, I've got this laptop and look what's installed on this." And so I gave him a copy of Diablo so I could play with him. And so we played one afternoon, and now he and Joe are back into it and totally addicted to it. So it is awesome. The good news about Diablo is it's not nearly the endless scope of WoW. It's just it's a game. It's got a beginning, middle, and end, and you can level your characters up, but there's no monthly fees or anything like that. But it's a really great.
If I pretend to be your brother, will you give me a laptop as well?
I didn't give him a laptop. I gave him a copy of Diablo 3. Phew,
Shame.
I did not give
I'd
him-
like the computer.
Sorry, Neil. But I can arrange something though. Maybe if you send me some pre-release stuff, I can send you a laptop. If we, work that out.
Really?
Yeah,
Well,
I don't want any old rubbish. I mean, if I want to give you some like pre-release, I want a really good i7 core thing.
well, if you get me enough pre-release stuff, that might happen because then I could turn around and sell half on the black market.
What is going on here?
What? Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing's happening at all.
Craig, you feel left out.
Yeah, kind of do. Yeah.
You're feeling unloved in the bad ring.
Anyway, Diablo 3, check it out. It's fantastic.
Hang on a second. I sent you a box of love the other day.
You did. I'm not feeling left out. Never mind.
No.
Forget it. It's
See?
great.
And you didn't
I'm
have
swimming in resin pewter.
and you didn't have to send him a laptop for it either.
I didn't. I didn't. My joke just went up and slapped me in the face. So there you go.
Nicely done.
Hurrah!
Nicely done.
Hurrah.
Don't mess with him.
Okay.
So, one thing about Diablo 3, though, my daughter was asking me, "Can I play this with you?" And the answer is no. The game is very, very dark. There are levels. Once I got to the level of a dungeon called the Butcher, that pretty much says it all. Entrails everywhere, guys stuck in the wall. It's not for kids, but it
Can only be played after 8.
Yes. My son asked me to buy him Modern Warfare 3.
And you got a Minecraft, right?
And I was kind of like, yeah, he got Minecraft. Because he was saying that some of his friends at school were playing it. And I was
I
like,
know. How do the parents let them do that?
Playing this, and I played it, and it was it's a cool game. I dug my copy out because I tend to buy things but then never play them. Hey, I could be a wargamer.
There you go.
It was kind of harsh in places. I mean, very good but harsh. And I was like thinking, nope, you're 10. You ain't getting
Right.
this.
Yeah, I'm with you. I definitely vet the games before my daughter plays them because I'm always nervous there's going to be something.
Yeah, you got to do that these days. I mean, these things are sort of almost
Definitely.
ultra realistic in some of their things, and the language as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's all across the board. So, Craig, what have you been playing? Watching or
What have I
slash
been
reading?
doing? Okay, well, I've been writing a lot of blog posts and battle reports and stuff like that. You can go to spartangames.co.uk and look at all that stuff, Uncharted C stuff. And so that's been taking up pretty much the bulk of my time. What free time I do have that I've managed to hide from my wife so that I can actually do other gaming stuff. I've been working on just transcribing text for Rodney from Watch It Played, who is building these awesome unit cards for Dust over at the Fantasy Flight Games Forum, and they are without a doubt the coolest unit cards for this
awesome.
game that you could possibly see. They look like something that Fantasy Flight made themselves. They're aesthetically, they fit right into the game. They've got everything right there on them.
Yeah,
I
nice.
think we've talked about them somewhere at one point. And so I have no skill whatsoever with Photoshop or anything like that, but I really wanted to help with the project. So I've been transcribing and summarizing rules so that they will fit on a card, and then sending them to Rodney, and then Rodney has been putting those in with all of his graphics and all of his cool effects and everything. So that's been a really neat little side project that I've worked on that was just like an hour or two that I threw into that, but it was really exciting just to be part of that. Listening right now to Monster Hunters Alpha, which is by Korea, is his last name, and I've sort of tongue-in-cheek talked about him in the past, where you had Monster Hunters International, and then the sequel was Monster Hunters Vendetta, and both of them were very much guilty pleasure kind of listens, because it's really kind of patriot porn kind of. All the characters have southern accents, and they're all like gun-toting, yeehaw, and I like it, and I like that, but it is a little bit over the top. And then I found out that the third book in the series actually doesn't. The first two books are first person, and the narrator obviously is this main character who's, of course, the accountant that I've spoken of in other episodes, where he just happens to be a pit fighter and he just happens to be awesome at shooting and everything else. And so he's not in the third book at all. And I was like, oh, that's kind of weird, because I usually don't like it when they do a sequel that doesn't include the main character. Mm-hmm. And then, however, I went and I looked at a bunch of reviews, and the reviews were all like, oh my God, this is the best one ever. So I listened to it, and damned if it's not the best one ever.
Wow, nice.
And it got me to thinking that first person is very hard to write without the main character coming across as an egomaniac, because everything's about him.
Right.
And so now the third book, not only is it not have that character in it, but it's not in the third person, although there is a really cool little woven through it is a journal entry kind of conceit that's really cool, because it kind of tells a little mini story that went on years ago that kind of like is the background of what's going on currently. So I'm really, really enjoying it. It still kind of has that, America do or die thing going on. But it's I'm really, really enjoying it, which is good, because Tyranny of Cliches, which sounded dusty when I talked about it last episode, and I was like, no, seriously, it's really funny. No, it wasn't.
It fell apart in the middle.
It did. It had, like, the first two were really, really intriguing and funny and thought provoking, and then it was kind of like, really, seriously, does anybody actually believe that? I don't think so. And then towards the end, it kind of picked up a little bit with a few, but there was some long chapters in the middle, and that's one bad thing about a Kindle or a Nook, I would have to guess, is that you don't really know how much longer you've got. Like, it says, you're 40% through, or 41% through, or 53% through. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't know how much longer this is going to take. And as you're reading it, you kind of get an idea of every 3 page flips, it goes one. So it's a 300-page book. Okay. But this one was so full of footnotes at the end. Literally, the book ended on 73%.
That's funny.
I was like, yes, thank you, God. Because I have that problem where I can't stop reading.
I've got 3 things to say.
3 things. Okay, let's have them.
The first one is, did you actually breathe at any point during that?
No, I did not.
Okay, and the second thing is, I know it's 2:15 in the morning here in the UK, but I have absolutely no idea what you were talking about.
Okay.
The third thing is, I believe I might have read a recipe the other day.
You read a recipe?
Yeah, well, it's a hard recipe.
Uh-oh.
But there was nothing patriotic about it.
I don't know.
A recipe for, I think you said recipe for patriotic porn. Is that what you said?
No, I most definitely did not. you might have said that. You might be thinking that. But
okay.
I'm not going to get anywhere in the depth of the premise.
Try to slow it down, then.
I like having Neil on the show. This is great.
I feel like this is not the way this was supposed to turn out. I don't remember this being 2 against 1 last time, or 3 against 1 as it would have been last time.
Don't feel got at.
No. It's all love.
No.
It's all love.
It's all good.
Right.
Look, you guys have said it. Just show some spunk.
Right. Spunk.
Right. Spunk it is.
Okay.
So anyway, speaking of Audible, Audible.
Craig, are you throwing a little bit?
Am I what?
You need to regroup on this.
I'm good. I'm fine. Thank you. I do appreciate that.
I'm loving this.
Okay.
Your cohort there actually paid me $10 whole to annoy you tonight.
See? Didn't cost me much. Didn't cost me a laptop.
$10. It would have taken money, Neil.
That's only like £5. You realize that's like nothing.
Well, that's today.
Right.
When the Greeks bail on the euro over the weekend, we'll see how much it is.
Hey, $10. I could buy Greece for that.
Wow. Send your emails to Neil at spartangames.co.uk. All right.
Anyway, so Audible. So Audible is good. So yes, I got Monster Hunter Alpha off of Audible. Mm-hmm. And of course, we have our ongoing relationship with Audible.com, which is, what do you do, Russ? How do you get that?
Head on over to the D6generation.com, click on the little Audible icon in the corner, and you will get the 30-day trial and a free credit that is yours to keep for any book you like, and that book is yours forever.
Let me tell you how cool that membership is, because you hear Russ talk all the time about John Ringo and his Troy Rising series, which
awesome.
Was the first book? Do you
The
remember?
first book is Live Free or Die.
Live Free or Die. How
Easy
can I
to remember
forget
because it's our state motto.
that? Because that's our
Russ, is it awesome?
It is awesome.
Okay, cool.
It is extra awesome. In fact, it is super duper awesome, Neil.
with awesome sauce.
And Neil, you should read this
Really?
book because the alien factions remind me a little bit of some of the wackiness in Firestorm Armada. I like it a lot. It's really good. Really, really
I
good.
can't read these things. I actually don't know how to read.
Oh, that's a shame.
Because we're talking audible.com.
You can listen to them, though. That's the beautiful
You can
thing.
get complete illiterate and
Someone
enjoy
can read
it.
them to you. That's right.
Somebody actually helps
But
you
are
with
they,
the computer
but
part.
are they actually spoken in English?
They are.
Not the Queen's English. But you know, we have to deal with what we have here, really.
Huh, that's true.
Okay, I'll deal with that.
Okay.
Okay. So you one
let me
free
straight. I go where on your website?
The D6generation.com and click the little Audible ad
Yeah.
on the right-hand side there.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Can't miss it. See how he does that? He's doing great. I really appreciate Neil getting these plugs out here for us. I really do.
okay.
I just want to join.
So that gives you
I don't want to feel left out like Craig.
You're doing great.
wow, way to play on the persecution complex.
I'm loving it. This is great. I see why he destroys all his employees at games.
Yeah, you just browbeat them till they leave the table crying, and then you move the models around on your own.
There may be an element of that.
I can only imagine. Hey, I wouldn't move that ship there if I were you. If I wanted my paycheck signed or anything, you might want to leave that one back a couple
You've
inches
been to
there.
the office. Awesome.
Okay.
Yes, like I said, awesome. See what happened? That was like by osmosis. I picked up the word awesome from you.
See, it's very contagious.
That's just like awesome with sauce on top.
We'll work on Wicked next. We'll get you using Wicked, Neil. You can take Wicked back
I'm
to
not going to use the word wicked. That's
Wicked.
just like wrong.
Wicked awesome. Got to work on
Wicked.
that.
That sounds wrong.
No, it's not.
Well,
It's-
that's New England for
it's
you.
New England, which must be better than Old England because it's new.
That's right.
Right?
And everybody knows that just new for news sake is best.
New is best.
So anyway, what was I? Oh, yes, John Ringo and Troy Rising.
Oh, right.
So they had a sale this week, which was an awesome sale it was sci-fi and fantasy. And it was crazy. I picked up the second and third books in the Troy Rising series, which I've been looking forward to, and I was going to get them with a credit. And of course, your membership, once you've had your free credit, your membership costs like $13 a month or something like that. And you're still getting you get an audiobook for that, which costs usually about $30. So it's still a crazy deal. But the real value of the Audible membership is these crazy sales. So I picked up the next two books in the Troy Rising series for $8 each, which is crazy because that's at or slightly less than the paperback cost for a full-length, not unabridged audiobook of each of those books. So I'm just really super excited because Monster Hunter Alpha, like I said, is very entertaining right now, and I'm really looking forward because now I have two books. And my thing is, I did what most people do, and I joined Audible thinking, whoa. I joined Audible thinking I'll take the free book and then I'll cancel. And then I didn't cancel because they came up with a cool sale. So I was like, okay, I'll stay. Now I've got like 5 credits built up and I don't use them because whenever I need a new book, there's like some awesome sale. And so I'm like, oh, for $8, that's crazy. So I get another one of those. But every now and then when there isn't one, that's when I use my credit. So it's really, really a great deal. And it's awesome I have a slightly longer than 8-minute commute. So maybe that's instrumental in the value of the Audible thing, but I was just really excited when I saw both of those books on there on the sale. If you were watching The Simpsons this past week, you saw that there was an online forum called the D4G on The Simpsons.
Oh wow!
So you be the judge. I don't know.
The D4G.
D4G. It was the daily fourth grader forum.
Oh,
Now, it could have been the dictionary. They could have been playing off Dictionary for Geeks or,
prior art. We have a prior art lawsuit. We'll have to get a lawyer.
Absolutely. Let's jump right on
All
there.
right.
Sue them. I'd say sue them.
Sue them.
That's the American way.
We'll send them a cease and desist letter. That's the English way.
Ooh, there we go. Ooh,
That'd be wicked.
that would be wicked.
That would be Wicked. Neil's right on
Neil,
this.
that was actually the correct use of the term wicked.
It was awesomely correct. That was wicked
not-
awesome usage of the correct use.
That was not the dialectic, idiosyncratic use of the word wicked.
No.
Was it the sarcastic use?
It could
I
be
think
both.
I think it made
Worked, that worked on so many levels. It was impressive.
The dry, sarcastic British wit is razor sharp tonight.
It is.
Is it really the lowest form? I mean, I'm not sure with this one.
I don't think it
That
is.
would be. I mean, if it was, that would be truly awesome.
Now he's just showing off. We better move on to the next segment.
Anyway, so I'd just like to throw a quick shout out, thank you to Curtis and Doom on You 72 from the Fantasy Flight forums, because they used to have these patches, these shoulder patches, like uniform patches that match the factions of the Dust universe. And both of these guys, when I came on, and like they were all talking about it and trading back and forth, and I was like, "Hey guys, I don't have any patches, but I'd like to buy one from someone." And both of these guys jumped on my my request and offered to send me one for free. So that's really cool. There's a lot of really cool, nice guys going on over at the forums there. So check that out too. So I just wanted to say thanks to those guys. What's that?
You've never asked me for it.
You don't make patches.
What's that going to do with anything?
It's irrelevant.
Okay, Neil. I will compose an email tomorrow begging you for a patch that you don't make. How's that?
Hey, I can arrange it.
You have
Yeah,
to get a
I'll do
patch. Does he? Do you make patches for Uncharted Seas?
No.
Just checking.
but I might.
It would be a good idea. It'd be awesome. I would like to have them on my bag.
Well, they have them bags.
That's wicked, not awesome.
That would be wicked awesome.
Wicked awesome.
All right.
Okay, I'm done.
Is that achievements? I think that's achievement.
That is.
You're listening to the D6 generation. Born to gain.
Well, that sound means it's time.
That was a sick wolf.
It's time to talk about not rabbit animals, but instead we're going to talk about Lone Wolf development. Our friends at Lone Wolf make some of the best software gamers can acquire. And speaking of acquiring software, let's say you are a Mac fan. Well, not to worry, because not only is Hero Lab fully released now on the Mac, you can get everything you need for Hero Lab, not even beta, it's the full-on version, but Army Builder beta for Mac is now available as well. So, if you are an Army Builder fan and always wanted the Mac, now's your time. Try to jump into the beta on over there. Head on over to wolflayer.com, where Lone Wolf Development lives. You get all that information. Also, Hero Lab, lots of expansions for Hero Lab. The Pathfinder beginner box is supported. There's that cool tactical console in Hero Lab.
Which is awesome.
It's just awesome. So make sure you head on over. And also make sure you follow them on Twitter at Lone Wolf Devel for all the latest Lone Wolf development information and news.
Find out what's going on.
Yeah, you'll get the latest tweets from them whenever they've got a new hotness to check out. So definitely do that.
What's going on at the Wolf Lair?
What are those wolves up to? And now, what's in the news? With the shout-out, Impact City Roller Derby, a board game about the fastest-growing sport in America. Skate fast, hit hard, pledge today at Kickstarter.com. And now the news, and we got to get to it quick because there's a lot of geek news this week. Up first, sad news for most geeks, George Lucas leaving Lucasfilm. George Lucas recently announced that he will be retiring and leaving Lucasfilm. And say what you want about his most recent film efforts, but most geeks can't help but have a very special place in their hearts for the man who gave us the Star Wars universe. Such a wonderful playground. Yeah, and my favorite hero, Indiana Jones. Ba 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 ba. Thank you, Wakeland. It's the end of an era. Enjoy your retirement, George. Speaking of Lucas, the new Star Wars game has been announced from Lucas Arts Entertainment. Sort of an interesting twist this time. They're calling it Star Wars 1313, and it is a mature theme title. Apparently, players will take on the role of a dark and grungy bounty hunter working in the seedy underbelly of Coruscant. And apparently there'll be some showing this at E3 next week, so keep an eye out if you are a Star Wars fan interested in that kind of a thing. Also, the Dungeons & Dragons next beta is in full swing. Many folks have received the beta invite and are gotten beta materials and are trying out their own play sessions of D&D Next. most results so far have been positive. Speaking of role-playing campaigns, the Descent 2 campaign preview has been posted as well. So if you're excited about Descent 2, head over to the Fantasy Flight website and check out the latest information on the Descent 2 campaign system. Here's another exciting one. The War Store is showing off the SSU Warfare book as in stock. That's the Dust Warfare book for the SSU faction, the new Russian faction. The models have been released already. Everybody's been excitedly waiting for the Warfare book rules, and it's apparently in stock and shipping now to retailers everywhere. Speaking of games with aliens, because apparently the next race coming out for Dust Warfare, everybody seemed to think it's aliens, so that was the poor segue there. Sorry about that. Matt Wilson has addressed an issue on Level 7. So apparently Level 7 is a board game that's been cleared up. Or at least it's going to be many things, but the first game centered around it will be a board game. And it's sort of based in sort of a semi-conspiratorial X-Files style universe with aliens in it. In fact, it's apparently so well hits this that there's been some folks claiming that Privateer Press has actually been hired by the federal government to create this game to throw people off of the real alien invasion. Anyway, don't believe me? Check out Matt Wilson's blog over at mattwilsonprime.com and see his response to the crazy accusations that apparently some people think are true. Speaking of aliens, how about Starfleet Captain's aliens? Okay, that was a pretty weak segue also. Not going well today. Starfleet Captains, WizKids have recently announced the Romulans expansion to Starfleet Captains. Apparently, the Romulan Empire expansion will include 12 new Romulan ships and 10 of the new subdecks, as well as introducing a new mission type, the espionage mission, which seems very appropriate for Romulans. Many folks regard Starfleet Captains as one of the best releases of 2011, and I know Wakeland's very, Romulans are great, can't wait. Very excited about Romulans. Yes, there we go. Also, speaking of other news, Game Salute has just reported, along with Tom Vassell, that Tom Vassell will now be taking over the news system over at GameSalute.com. That's pretty exciting. So the Dice Tower News webpage will be deprecated and become part of the Game Salute news system, and Tom will be working with Game Salute to make sure they have great news over there. That's pretty exciting. I know Russ has a great deal of respect for Tom, and in fact, what do you call him, Russ, all the time? He's the dean of podcasting. Board game podcasting, the dean of board game podcasting. That's what I call him, the dean of. Yeah, kind of like Jerry Williams, the dean of talk radio. You don't listen to talk radio? No, Wakeland. I'm not really sure what you're talking about. Anyway, dean of board game podcasting. That's what I call Tom, and it's great to see him over there doing game news for Game Salute. Okay, thank you, Russ. Possibly one of the biggest news stories of the week, and it probably should have been the lead story actually, was Games Workshop going digital. Games Workshop announced and launched this past Friday, June 1st, their release of iBooks for some of their major products. In fact, they're going to be releasing new iBook products every month. Right now, they've just released the Space Marine Codex, along with a How to Print Citadel Miniatures, the Ultramarine Edition, along with something called a Battlefield Challenge, the Death Knell Watch, and it's sort of a Warhammer fantasy scenario. And then Scrolls of Binding, which are full rules to use your Warhammer Storm of Magic battles, for your Storm of Magic battles to have binded creatures for you guys there. And these books are interesting. They've got full interactive videos. They've really taken advantage, it looks like. Wickland, have you played with this yet? Yeah, I actually bought the Space Marine one. How much was that? Well, it retails for, I believe, £25 or $42. Let me get closer to the mic. Yeah. So it retails about $42, which is pretty pricey for a digital book. I'm not going to lie. It did look great, though. Got a chance to play with it for a bit. The Space Marine stuff looked really, really cool. Very, very robust. Had a lot of really cool interactive images. You could page through and see the different shoulder pads of the Space Marines. What I really liked about it was the cross-referencing. So if you're reading an entry for a unit like Space Marine Hero and it says Iron Halo, if you click on Iron Halo, it'll give you the full rules will pop up on the Iron Halo. So you have to page back and forth in the book and see how they work. That's pretty cool, too. Images are great. You can click on images and they zoom right in. You get a nice, big, full image. The index works great. You can zip around the book very nicely. $42 is pretty steep, and some folks were saying they thought there was an army builder in there. There's not. It's just a book. It's an iBook. So is that it, Wakeland? Yeah, it was great. I thought it was pretty cool, but kind of pricey. So we'll see how that goes. If you're interested in that kind of stuff, also just so you know, if you do have an iPad, and again, it is only available as an iBook, so it's only available on an iPad, and it does not work on an iPhone either. It must be an iPad to read these. And there are free samples, though. So if you have an iPad, head on over to the iBooks and check the store and search for Games Workshop, and you'll find all the products. Most of the other products are pretty affordably priced. All the Scrolls of Binding are $1.99. The Painting Guide is like $7 or $7 or $8. And the Battlefield Challenge, I think, is like $4 or $5. It's just the Space Marine Codex is $42, which is more robust than the regular Space Marine Codex, but that price at $33, $45 seems a little lot, at least according to Wakeland. We'll see what happens with that. And finally, Gen Con news. The Gen Con app is out for 2012, so if you've been anxiously waiting to get that on your phone, the Android and iPhone apps are out and updated, so you can see all the latest events and start planning your visits. Also, the D6G Play by Mob event is now up and live on the D6G website. I'm sorry, not the D6G website, on the Gen Con website. So you head on over there and you go to Find Events and you search for D6G or the D6 Generation. You will find our event. It's very exciting. It has only 30 tickets left out of 80. So we didn't get the 100 ticket venue. It is now an 80-ticket venue. So head on over to that if you want to get in. There are 30 slots left. It is free. As long as you have admission, you can get in. So you don't have to have any special tickets for that. But we'll try to let you in if it is full. But the only way to guarantee you're going to be in there is if you get your ticket. So get over there now. Also, kind of exciting at Gen Con, new records being set. Apparently, last year at Gen Con, we had record attendance with 33,000 people and 120,000, what they call them, turnstile attendance over the course of the 4 days. So what they do there is, you see, they count on people go through the turnstiles every day and add them all together. Of course, you're the same person, you count 4 times. Which is that's why it's 33,000. It was there. But it's still pretty huge. It was awesome. They had a great year. The exhibition space sold out in January, which was a new record for Gen Con. And the largest event registration ever has occurred at Gen Con also this time around. So very exciting. Gen Con's looking really huge this year. We're excited to see them doing so well and can't wait for August. And that's what's in the news.
Worlds to conquer, foes to vanquish, violence to sow, and medieval crops to reap. The whole world of gaming at your fingertips. The D6 Generation. Born to game.
Welcome back. And now we thought this would be a fun topic. And having Neil on the show, how could we not talk about different miniature manufacturing processes? Is that the right plural there, Craig?
Yes, that's an excellent plural, Russ.
Thank you. So what we're talking about...
I really like that word. That's a good word.
Processes. Now, do they say processes the same way in across the pond there, or do you pronounce it like you pronounce aluminum, which is incorrectly?
We pronounce everything correctly, I'd like to point out here. So, you guys get this totally wrong. It's a generational thing, but we'll live with it.
Okay, as long as we're good. So, but is processes or is it processes? I bet it's processes.
Do you know what? I don't care.
Okay, good. Moving on then.
I don't think Neil actually says that word. So
hopefully what we do care about is how these things are made, and they've definitely changed a lot over the years.
Right.
Craig and I both have had firsthand experience seeing how metals were made over here back when Games Workshop used to do stateside or United States miniature production.
Right.
I think they still do some of it here, but not as much as they used to.
Not nearly where they used to.
So they used to
be a much longer drive.
Back in Baltimore, Maryland. So the metal miniatures are kind of neat. So Craig, how do they make metal miniatures as you remember it?
That would be the spinning. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes. So they have these sort of rubbery disc-shaped molds, right?
Right.
And they've carved out the little shapes in the edges, in the outer edge, and they use centripetal force. They spin this thing, pouring the hot molten, originally lead, and now some sort of pewter compound right into the center of this, and the centripetal force spins the metal out into the edges of the discs, and therefore fills in the little gaps, and you get your little metal models. And what
I love the technical language. This is fantastic.
Do you like that?
Centripetal.
So what would you use for technical?
This is cool.
What do they call the little rubbery molds there, Neil?
Funny enough, a mold.
There you go. See, we are keeping it very technical here. I'm glad. So now I don't know, Neil. I don't know if they've automated this nowadays, but back when GW was doing it, this is like the early 2000s when we watched them doing it. it was pretty much a manual labor deal. Some guy there would stand there over the hot metal and spin these things, and then carefully pull them all out and put them in little buckets matching their part bits. And so if you had a Marine with 4 or 5 or 6 different metal bits, they might usually each mold that I remember seeing had all the same shape in it. There wasn't like one mold with an arm, a leg, and a body. It was all the leg mold, and then the arm mold, and then the torso mold. And so they'd spin them all out, and they'd sort them all out. And so some of the cost used to come from the fact that some poor guy had to manually spin each of these parts in order to get enough bits to make one model. So if it's a 6 or 7 bit model, it wasn't just the weight of the metal that made it expensive, but also the amount of labor it would take to make all those little bits to make the model.
Well, I mean, the process is fascinating. I mean, I've learned an incredible lot over the last few years of Spartan Games. I mean, if I kind of come at it from the way we do it, and then sort of, I mean, hopefully I can kind of answer some of your question.
Yeah.
It's still very much a manual process. You have your various mold makers. I mean, we've got casting staff, mold makers, and they work very closely with the design guys. We use about 3 different sort of rubber molds, basically the vulcanized molds. We have white ones, black ones, and red ones, basically. They have variations of definition and detail hold in them. The black molds are the ones that are production molds, generally speaking, because they last for an awful long time. Excuse me. The white molds are the ones that we tend to put soft masters in. So kind of highly detailed soft masters go in there. The idea being is that we don't destroy them when we're making the molds. And we have these red molds, which we tend to use for precision work, which are they're sort of a new one on me, because I didn't know those ones existed until my guys introduced them to me. So yeah, that's kind of. I mean, I'm very fortunate. I mean, I'm kind of very blessed to have an incredibly talented design team working for me. I mean, the boys are, they're very into the subject, and they are hugely talented. And Martin, who runs the mold room, is an incredibly capable guy who's put together a team that works incredibly hard to get the objects in, because we mold. I mean, humongous numbers of objects every month, so it's. Wow. It's kind of cool. So the way it works for us is that we have the master models. They go to Martin's team, who then clean the objects up and they prepare them for the molds. And then you're absolutely correct. It's still a manual process, at least for us. I mean, I'm sure there may be other companies and things that do a more automated process, but ours is still very much a hands-on, kind of a proper model maker's approach to working with these molds. They sit and they carve out some bits and they get the models in there, and then I love watching these guys. Actually, I like watching them try to carry the equipment because it weighs so much. Yeah. Kind of like they can have these kind of pathetic little whimpers come out as they try to move this kind of 500-pound machine. It kind of makes me cool. It's kind of funny.
Are you talking about your metal process and your resin process? Is it very different, or do they still spin the resin too, or is the resin process totally different from how they spin the metal?
There are a number of ways you can do it. I mean, on the metal side of things, it's all spinning,
right?
And I mean, there are some more amateur mechanics in play where you can actually you don't have to spin the metal, you can pour it, but that's kind of not good. Right. It's like the resin. Even when you're working with the metal, it's you're still kicking out air. The whole thing with the object is to get rid of your failure.
Right.
By removing the air. So watching the guys cut the molds is, ironically, cutting the mold to get the object in is almost the simplistic part. It's them working out the direction of the spin, the flow of the metal, where it's going to fill voids. Then you work out, where the air is going to escape. I kind of love just. I mean, every now and then I'll kind of go down and watch them cutting the molds and it's good fun. It's definitely a skill. I
remember seeing them at Games Workshop used to explain to us that it really was craftsmanship, because you had to sort of get an understanding of how you'd want to angle the part you're putting into the mold, so that, as you say, when the metal flows into it, you get the best fill possible, so that you don't get any air bubbles in there. And so that you start to learn there's certain angles that work, certain angles that don't work. And
you're working against gravity.
Exactly. So it's sort of an art form, really, right? Almost. So it's definitely a craft as much as it is.
It really is. It's incredible. sometimes the guys will have an object and I'll sort of look at it and I'll go, no chance you're going to get that out. And they'll kind of go, oh, you'll watch. And then they'll kind of go away and, excuse me, they'll put it in the mold and then they'll spin it and they'll give it to me and I'm kind of going,
how did you do
that? Okay, I give in. I have no idea how you did that. But no, it's it's great. It's nice to see craftsmanship.
Yeah,
it's kind of cool to see these guys enjoying this physical craft of what they do. I mean, like I said, it's cool.
It is cool, and I think that's part of what's I think sort of the nostalgia and the coolness of the metals is that you have that craftsmanship there. Oftentimes, now I don't know how you guys do it, but back when we saw this being done, this was still back when people did greens and a sculptor did it all by hand, and then they would take the impression and figure out how to do the mold. But one of the challenges of the metals and metal molds, and I don't know if this has gotten any better nowadays, but those molds don't last very long. And so they're constantly having to remake the molds all the time. Is that still the case, or do some of the molds last a lot longer than
It depends on the objects. I mean, sort of some of the larger objects, I mean, I can't speak for all companies, but eventually there's a tearing happens to the rubber. Basically, as the objects come out, as they release out, they degrade over time. I mean, the black molds are actually staggeringly tough. I mean, a well-designed black rubber mold, you should be able to get thousands of runs out of it.
Oh, wow.
But then again, but if you put also the heat as well, if you put a really huge object in there, that's that's holding all of the heat of that, that kind of molten pewter, then it's going to kind of cause degradation. You just have to watch what you're doing with the mold. You have to treat them with respect,
right?
And not try and push them too far. And when you do start realizing that there's a problem, you basically have to just get it out of the product run. It's resting your molds as well. I mean, we've got hundreds of molds, so we basically run them in cycles. And what the guys do is they will run them, and then they will break them and rest them and move other molds in. So the idea being is that you're not constantly stressing the mold. We do the same with resin molds as well. On most of our models, we tend to make between 30 and 40 molds of each one.
Yeah.
Because I mean, at the moment, the guys, we probably push out. It's difficult to say, but I mean, we probably make between 90 and 150,000 objects a week.
Wow.
In resin, and so we have to make sure that the molds are looked after. We spend a small fortune on kind of like release agents and sprays and chemicals that kind of like look after the molds, and the guys spend meticulous about spending time looking after the molds, because obviously we spend more money on the kind of the rubber and things than a bondage house.
Oh, so they're not cheap. Because I thought I was always under the impression, I guess, and I guess this is wrong, but as you start to talk a little bit about plastics here, I was always under the impression that the metal molds were sort of the affordable version of molds, but they didn't have the durability. The molds they use for the traditional plastics that are on sprues, those are really, really expensive, but they're extremely durable. Is that sort of the case, or is it that?
Yes and no. I mean, it's yes and no. I sound like a politician.
Tis the season.
On one count, maybe, but perhaps not. No, it's I could plastic molds are obviously, if you they do last a long time if you make the proper steel ones. I mean, those things they're good for hundreds or potentially millions of impressions, I guess. Right. I mean, hundreds of thousands definitely. Upfront cost on plastic molds. I mean, most companies around the world are under constant pressure these days. So making plastic molds is expensive, and it's a volume game. It depends on how much money you want to put up front when you're making the molds, and the belief in how far you're going to take those molds and how much volume you're going to do in the business. So yes, you are talking a chunk of money up front, and you've got a mold that will last for a long time. And then, of course, they go into a rather large machine. You press a button, and you basically make 6 months stock.
Right. So the nice thing about plastics is it's automated if you can afford the upfront cost, right?
It's automated. I mean, and it's an interesting process, and we've been having a lot of fun looking at that and talking about where we're going to go with plastic. But you've got the mold design issues in terms of the way that the objects release. You've got skin detail on it as well in terms of what the model can hold detail wise. And plastics as well. I mean, we love resin. I mean, it's one of those things that we kind of we fully embraced it and got right behind. Working with some good resins. We formulate our own resins now. But we got a chemist and we actually have fantastic recipe now for the resin that we use, which is cool. And we get pretty impressive skin detail, we think, and we're very pleased with that. And it's we're constantly kind of pushing the objects to see how far we can take them. Resin's hard to work with. I mean, it's hard to get right in volume. Because you can imagine when you. I mean, I've said it a few times. I've said it in our forum. I think if you want to make 50 of an object, it's easy. It's like it's like a walk in the park. But once you start talking about making 5,000 or 10,000 of it, then it starts getting tricky. Especially when you're then punting out over 300 different models, sort of thing. So it's sort of you've got to line that manufacturing processing up quite well. I mean, we're learning all the time with this. We're still a relatively young, small company, but we are sort of getting better at the manufacturing. So jumping back to the metal side of things, I mean, I love pewter objects because I like the physical nature of them. I like the weight of pewter figures. Most of my wargames collection is in metal, and it's quite a large collection. So it weighs a lot. I could probably.
Well, you pay a lot for it, so you might as well get some good weight out of it, right?
Well, I think the last time I moved it, I had to hire a 7-ton truck.
Wow!
To move the collection in. Yeah, I'm a crazy war gamer. I think you guys probably know that, but my collection is crazy stupid. So it's and it's even worse now. Though it's nothing worse. Make your own war games company and your collection suddenly goes really stupidly big.
Right.
But no. So pewter's good. I mean, we love pewter. In variety. We've been dabbling with it of late, doing a lot of work on sort of various things that I probably can't even talk about. But. It's all fun. I think Craig's seen some of them. I've kind of I'll let him see.
I'll have to grill Craig later.
Yeah. But so you can kind of
he won't tell anything though. He keeps his secrets, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
So the plastics.
Did I even answer your question? I've actually no idea.
No, you did great. So
I was in the zone.
You were. You gave us some good information across the board there. So if metals are sort of affordable, and there's a nice, sort of I don't know if it's a nostalgia or just a nice feeling to having the weight of the metal model there. And plastics are, sort of the high upfront cost, but you can crank them out like crazy. But they've got their own design considerations. But I guess if you're going to make enough, then they'll pay for themselves in scale. What's so attractive about resin? Why do so many companies go? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say jump back to pewter. And the main issue with pewter is that pewter tends to fluctuate in price around the world. Right. So we buy it in big volume. We buy many tons of it, and it's one of those things that you can stabilize your cost base by buying. I mean, I think one of the issues is it does tend to fluctuate. So unless you've actually bought a large amount of it, it can be complicated for your business model because it will literally oscillate from, I don't know, I mean, numbers off the head, but £10 a kilo to £20 a kilo, and you're never quite sure where it's going to kind of go next, sort of thing. Yeah, and that can cause issues for people. So unless you, define a good deal and get it in bulk, then it can be tricky for people for companies to deal with. I mean, it's easy to work with. I mean, it's. The machinery is not relatively inexpensive. I mean, by inexpensive, you're talking tens of thousands to get it all set up, but it's not a vast amount of money. And it is incredibly easy to work with. And once you've got the molds made, and that in itself is the art form, making the molds. It's getting somebody that can make really, really good molds that work for you.
So it sounds like metal.
So once you've got that, then you're off and running. I mean, one person can make a hell of a lot of figures pretty quickly, actually. Once you got your mold set up and you're up and running.
So it sounds like setup is pretty affordable, but the material is the problem, right? The material for metal is volatile.
It can fluctuate in price, and then I think that's what that. I mean, it doesn't. I'll be a little bit caustic. It doesn't fluctuate quite as much as some companies would have you believe it fluctuates. Never wanted to put my foot in it. And it does. It has been, I think, over the years, it has been used by people to hide behind price hikes and things, shall we say? So, but once you control it, it's actually a very pleasant material to work with.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
So, if metal's so awesome, why are so many companies attracted to resin? Is it sort of the lower cost material yet easy, but the molds are easier to work with than plastics? Is that sort of the appeal, or what's the deal with resin?
Well, it's easy to make. I mean, you've got to make the move into plastics is an interesting one because you start playing around with your methods behind getting your models into those molds. So right now, we as you know, most of our designs are done digitally. But we still have traditional sculptors as well. But it's I'm not one of these people that thinks that digital is going to make traditional go away. There's definitely there's so much scope to have real world sculpting and digital sculpting working hand in hand. So even though we do predominantly digital design on our current games, we are big fans of traditional. So you've got for things like pewter molds and resin, you've got access to available skills. You've got people out there that you can get to that have a skill set that allow you to work with in these mediums. Plastic is a different kettle of fish. You've kind of got the 3-up idea whereby you basically have a large size model which then by hand gets carved into the molds, and then you go that route, or you have the kind of a full-on digital route where you literally, kind of computer controlled layers and things, and you make the mold. It's like, it's digital straight to the mold and bang. But of course, you've got to get you've got to have the people and the resources to get your models into those molds, and that can start be coming an overbearing cost for some people. So we've. And then you've got the detail as well. I mean, I remember we sat with a digital, with a plastics company with some of our models, and they just basically said,
"Can't do it."
Well, we'd be happy to work with you on these ones, but you got to get rid of a load of detail on the models before we even contemplate doing it. At which point there was 3 of us, so we sort of sat in the room, looked at each other, and we went, "Thanks very much. The coffee was great."
So is it really that resin's the only medium right now that can do the detail that a company
No. I mean, you can get the detail, but I mean, but resin. If you use the good resins, and we use, we don't use the polyester stuff. We use the polyurethane. So we use the best resins out there. And then, well, as I say, recently we started formulating our own version of it, which works really well for us because it's temperamental. I mean, you've got temperature issues with resin. You've got the speed of it. You've got you're constantly trying to control the environment into which you're pouring it, and then allowing it to set and store it in readiness. I mean, one of the issues. It's one of these things where when it first comes out the molds, it's a bit green. We call it. It's still got that kind of flexibility,
right?
But 24 hours later, it's rocking and rolling and ready to go out the door. So it's that sort of process of making it and getting it right, and then leaving it, and then getting it packed and things. But it's resin. You've got air in there. You've got issues with making sure that it demolds properly. That you try and deflash it as well as you can. Spot any potential defect. Make sure that you've got lack of that the air bubbles go.
Right.
We double vac everything. We have a. The actual resin gets mixed and it gets vacked, and we played around with our ratios to make sure that we could control the speed at which it generates heat.
What does vac mean for our listeners?
Vacuum. Basically, we have these large vacuum chambers that that we basically degas the material. So the first process we do is we mix the resin, we put it in a vacuum chamber, and we drop it down to whatever the setting is that it gets dropped down to, which I don't even remember. And that
really low.
The theory there is it kind of it removes it extracts the air from the resin.
Okay.
and then basically we then have to get the resin into the mold. At which point we then it goes back into the vacuum chamber and gets vacuumed again.
Oh wow!
And then when it comes out, it sits while it starts cooking off to a point at which it then gets taken from the casting rooms. It goes into the demolding rooms, where the guys there will check it to see whether it's ready to come out the molds, and then they'll then extract it. And then once they've extracted it from the molds, they will allow it. They'll put it onto racks of shelving to allow it to settle and to set.
Now, our listeners might have this idea that there's giant robotic arms doing all this, but
yeah, that'd
really
be fantastic. No, it's I have I basically went to a robot trained monkeys. No,
so it's a whole manual. So every step of this is manual, but there's no spinning really.
It's I mean it's manual. I mean basically it's that process is it has to be for the delicate nature of the models,
right?
From our point of view, I mean it's not. It's I mean I once a month I work in the vacuum in the production room, and then I also work in the demolding area because it sort of like keeps me honest to it.
Keeps you down to what the guys are doing. Yeah, that's cool.
Well, it's very easy for me to sit there and basically say, look, I need another 50,000 objects.
Right.
Why aren't you doing this? And I want a whole batch of this, and I want this, and I want that. Mm-hmm. And the guys they can sort of sit there in the meeting room. They can sort of look at me with this glazed expression as if to say he's gone crazy again.
He's mad.
And so I kind of do it because it's I think it's important that you don't lose track, you don't lose sight of how hard it is for the guys to do the job. And they're having to kind of move and hustle this stuff really quickly.
Oh no, yeah.
And you try and of course they have to do that within tolerance levels of a defect rate, because if you pour it wrong. And you mess up the entire batch of molds. The worst thing is if they pour it really badly and then they ruin the molds.
Oh, right, because it would. Now, so is there any? Let me ask you this, just so I have it right in my head. So, is there any spinning going on, or is it really just the vacuum process?
Not in the resin. I mean, we have processes we've tried where we have an incredibly good relationship with our resin and rubber supplier. Mm-hmm. These guys are they're a great company, and we have an excellent working relationship where they kind of bring new technologies to us, and it's really important for us as a company that they help keep us on track with the latest developments. Yeah. So we've tried that sort of stuff, but one of your issues is that you just can't get away from the vacuum chamber. Right. You have to degas this stuff. You've got to get the air out, mm-hmm. Otherwise. You end up basically giving substandard product, and you have to be. Now, it isn't a perfect process. I mean, things occur with resin,
right?
And it's just trying to capture that and making sure that you're trying to do your best to be on top of that, because because at the end of the day, it is a manual process.
Yeah,
and it's not a perfect process. It's a pretty good process, but so no machine. No spinning on this one.
No spinning, and everything's manual. That's really interesting.
Sorry.
No robots then. No giant molding robots.
How cool would that be?
That would be awesome.
I think it'd be great. I mean, I'd love to sit here and say, right. Yeah, we got loads of robots. They're cool.
So let me ask you this.
And then when they're not making resin robots, resin models, we have fights with them.
Right, like that movie. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I mean, my only worry is that they take over the planet and kill us all.
Well, that would be the problem. We'd have to blame it on you, so that would be really awkward.
You could blame it on me, but I'd be dead, so I wouldn't care.
It wouldn't matter, right? Let me ask you this. It seems like lately we've seen in sort of a hybrid. I don't know if you're familiar with how this is done or if it is really a hybrid, but if you look at some of the stuff that's coming out of Privateer Press with their plastics, where they don't come on a sprue, and they're not a polystyrene plastic. There's not really, if there's any mold lines, they're almost indiscernible. Is that another really a form of a resin technique? Is that just a newer plastic technology? Is it something totally different? Do you know how that part works?
I should think of Martin here, actually. He could have commented much better than me. I don't really know much about their process. Really, I mean, I know that you guys in the US call some of the polyurethane resins different things to what we call them. I think you kind of got these things, sort of like was it liquid plastics and things like that. You call them.
Right.
In essence, a lot of these things tend to be the same thing. I mean, if you design an object really well, and you cast it well, then you can make the mold lines practically not invisible, because they're always going to be there, but you can kind of hide them. So I don't know. I mean, I would imagine that. And again, I've never seen these things, so I can't really comment with total accuracy. But I would anticipate that, based on what you've said, that they would be some sort of polyurethane resin that is. I mean, a lot of the chemical nature of a lot of these things seem to mimic each other anyway. In terms of what. I mean, some of our objects are very plastic-like, even though they're resin. And depending on the resins you're using, you can get incredible levels of strength and flexibility to them. Right. I mean, some of the new resins that are coming out, they're staggering, and and they're sort of their nature to bend them, and is fascinating.
That's really cool.
So I don't really know.
Okay, I was just curious.
I'm sorry, I can't.
No. I'm just curious because they seem a little different. I was just wondering if it was sort of something unique to them, or if it's sort of a shift in the way things are being manufactured. But we're getting low on time, but I wanted to ask you one area, because I know this is an area you guys work a lot in, and that is how you use CAD, computer-aided design, in the design process of the miniature. And you'd mentioned earlier that you didn't see it replacing hand sculpts. So how has Spartan been able to leverage CAD? Not specifically, but how has it sort of changed what miniature manufacturers can do, and where is its best application, and where is still manual sculpting still the best spot, if that makes sense?
CAD for us it's a speed thing, basically. I mean, the fastest we've ever designed and got a product ready for market was 48 hours, which basically was. And we had about an 18-hour. There was a model that we made that was digitally created in 18 hours. Mm-hmm. It went into the rapid prototyping machine, came back out, and then literally, 2 and a bit days later, we were actually selling it.
Wow!
And so it's speed. Again, very fortunate. Even though our company's in the middle of nowhere in England, actually, we're in quite a rural area in the southwest of England, and we've actually got a design team that came together. By accident, almost. It kind of grew, and with different people from things like the computer games industry came to us, and our CAD team sort of evolved into, and it took over our design. Because at the very beginning, a lot of our models were physically sculpted, but we could never make them quick enough. And because we were exploding in growth and growing all the time, there was this kind of constant churn on the business to have to get models out significantly more rapidly than we were.
Right.
So we embraced CAD because we can. I mean, even the most complicated of objects that we make, you're probably looking at no more than a 3-day build.
Wow. Now, is it?
Sorry, go on.
Well, is the level of detail you get now, like if you look at some of the newer Uncharted Seas ships, I was thinking in particular where you have the actual gun decks and you can see the cannon ports open and the guns rolled out and things. Is that a level of design that would almost have been impossible manually, and that's something that CAD brings you, or is it just more of a skill set?
Not impossible. I'm sure that there are staggeringly talented sculptors out there that can do that level of detail. It would, to be brutal about it, it boils down to how much time they've got to make it and how much money they'll charge you to do it.
Right.
So we could. I'll give you an example. We have a model that we haven't actually out yet, but one of our guys is playing around with it, and even though it's a 1/1200 scale model, we have doors on it, and the doors have windows in them, and they've even got handles.
Wow.
Because with CAD, it's just that we also have models that we've made. I mean, tests where we were actually working on projects where we've taken models, and then that model then exists in everything from the exact same model is gone from 6 to 10 to 15 to 20 to 28 to 54 mil and even 120 mil scale.
Wow. Yeah.
And I've shown Craig some of those.
I have.
That's cool.
So it's sort of it gives you a fascinating ability to play around because see, we've got I mean, I personally have a thing whereby I don't think that our customers should necessarily on certain projects be restricted by scale.
Mm-hmm.
There's an element of that we should build games, and they should almost be allowed to play in whatever they want.
Yeah, right.
It's whatever. So the idea being is, let's say that you can get that they fall in love with the genre or the game you've created, and they like the aesthetic of what you've created. Why force them to necessarily play? So if they have got the biggest gaming table they've got is 3 foot by 2 foot.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let them play in small scale. If they've got like a gigantic 8 foot by 6 foot table that they game on, and they're really lucky to have that, then sure, let them play on the bigger scales. I mean, so it's digital for us gives us amazing sort of power to do anything we want, flexibility to do more or less anything we want with it, and also it allows us to do changes to a model as well. And so because sometimes you build a model, and it sort of sometimes it doesn't. It's only after you've made a couple of thousand that you think to yourself, actually, if we just changed it a little bit,
right,
it's better. And it gives us the ability to go back and finesse that product.
Well, that's great.
And then we can basically remake it again. And we're not. So I'm going to say we're not stressing the model makers. I'm sure that they would all tell you that actually I stress them every day of the week. But it's great. I mean, but again, I love the organic nature of hand sculpted stuff. So I don't, I'm not foolish enough to say, and I want to say that hand sculpted stuff's going to go away. But from our point of view, we've, we invested heavily in the tech, and we got some great model makers on board. And they have, every week they kind of sit there and they have their kind of little get together meetings, and I kind of go down sometimes and sit there and I listen to them, and I tend to walk away thinking, I actually pay you money to do this. You should be paying me. Because they're having huge fun with what they're designing. So, no, it's digital's cool. But you have to also on certain objects be really careful that you don't take the straight line element too far, because like with the Uncharted Sea ships, when we redesigned it, I mean that was a very hard project for us because we did it. We had to do it really quickly. I mean, we ended up, I think we rebuilt. I think it was 96 models in 12 weeks.
Wow!
It was one of the key elements to that one was making sure we kept the organic nature of it.
Mm-hmm.
Also building in, you kind of almost had to fake the defect, and by that I mean things like that aren't perfect.
Right.
When an orc makes a battleship, it doesn't have perfect parallel edges to it.
Right.
So the model maker there, Dave, who created those ones, he spent an awful lot of time kind of like building it and then messing it up.
Right.
in a good way.
Well, that makes sense.
So
yeah.
It's fascinating. But he plays around, and we kick those models around, and then we would kind of sit back and go, "There's too much detail," or and in fact, on some of the ships, we extracted detail because we put too much on them.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's getting a little bit silly, and we sort of stopped, and we were like, "We're pleased with this level of detail in these ones, so let's just move ahead now."
Right. You may not need the actual nails and deck boards. Probably just the deck board is plenty.
Yeah, so some of those things are a little bit crazy, yeah. But hey, we think people like it.
They do look great, and you can tell there's a lot of love in those boats.
Well, and the reaction to those new models has been fantastic. So so obviously we did something right.
Yeah, I would say so.
Now, Neil, can you walk us through let's say you've got a sculptor or you've got a designer, and you want him to do like a new race for one of the games. Can you walk us through is there still sketching and what exactly do they do one step by step to get that finished product?
Depends on the model maker. I mean, some of our sculptors, they concept their own pieces, so they'll sit. I mean, they all start with a pen and paper.
Yeah.
Christopher, who's the lead designer on Dystopian Wars, he has this little A4 pad that he cherishes on his desk, and he kind of sits there and he just doodles away at these little things, and he'll kind of and then almost by magic he'll appear by my desk and he'll be kind of thrusting this pad in my face saying, "What about this?" And I'll kind of go, "That's really cool, okay, let's do it." And then staggeringly, probably within 24, 48 hours, I'll actually have the model in front of me.
Wow.
I said in front of me, but digitally on screen. and whereas other ones like to work from other people's concept work. So we have people who kind of doodle and draw, and we sit with a planning meeting. We discuss the aesthetic and what we're trying to achieve. And the guys go. Sometimes they get so excited by it that they just go away and do it. We had we have another Chris who's one of the sculptors, and he have you seen our tripods that we did? We haven't released them yet. They were the kind of the invaders type thing that we did.
Yeah.
Craig, you seen them?
I don't think I've seen them yet.
They're due out probably sort of June, July time. But Chris was where he got excited by the idea of those, and I think he went home on the Friday, and on the Monday when he walked in, he kind of came straight to my desk, and he'd actually just built them all at home.
Oh wow!
And so I think they were done in about 2.5 days, and he basically built, kind of small walker, big walker, mothership, fighters, and a bomber. So it's sometimes it's hard to hold them back because they get the bit between their teeth, and then off they go, and I guess that's the beauty of the digital aspect. So they've all got their own working styles. I don't like to interfere with what they do because at the end of the day, they're the creative guys, not me. So if I tend to not try and hamper them by locking them down too much because that would be almost me imposing my work and practice on them, and I think that would damage what they do.
Mm-hmm.
So they all have their own unique little way of doing it. They make their sketches. One of them, Dave, who does a lot of sculpting, he tends to digitally sculpt something. He'd rather just go straight in and make the shapes and get the basic geometry. Then he'll come back to me and say, "Okay, are you happy with the geometry?" And I'll go yes. And he works in several packages, so he'll work in a kind of a straight line geometry package, and then he will, once he's got that right, he will then take it into a more organic modeler where he'll then start playing around with the shape and adding the detail. So it's interesting. No, they're all unique to the way they do it, but they all. The one thing they do is the commonality is they love it. So they all kind of come together and just infuse with each other on these things.
That's cool.
It's fun when they disagree though, because it's kind of I always find when you get creative time, they all disagree. It's cool. Like a huge fun fight,
Right.
Like, I'm just curious, Neil, when you're using that program, and do they design one half of it, and then the program does like a mirror image on the other side, so they don't really. Is there such a thing in CAD as like a cut and paste element, so they don't have to?
Yeah. I mean, otherwise they'd go completely crazy. I mean,
Right.
yes, sort of. I mean, because somebody like Chris might take a model and he might put 600 rivets on it. So unless he had the ability to kind of like get the software to duplicate and move these things around, he would probably go more crazy than he already is. It's fascinating, and some of the objects that he builds are so complicated that he actually physically has to make them in pieces.
Right.
Because he couldn't actually put the entire object into the machine, and he's got this stupidly powerful workstation on his desk, and he still breaks the software.
Yeah.
I mean, those tools are incredible. I mean, we use multiple packages. I mean, but like Chris's choice of tool is SolidWorks.
Okay.
Which is a kind of like a high-end engineering package, which I think people normally design things like car engines in.
Right.
And so whereas other guys use a piece of software that will range from £400 or £500 to something like SolidWorks, which I think costs. I mean, on that one there, it tends to be like £9,000-10,000 a seat sort of thing.
Right. Wow.
So it'll literally range from. And they might use multiple tools to do different bits and pieces on it. So they might be using hundreds of pounds of software, or they might be using, 10K of software.
Wow.
Right.
It's just whatever they're happy with. I mean, Dave came from the computer games industry, so but they all vary. The guy,
right?
And so he uses. I can't even remember the name of what he uses, but they use these different elements.
Let me ask you this, Neil: when they're designing in the CAD package, do they have to be concerned about the manufacturing process, or is the process such that, as if they can dream it, you'll be okay with it? I mean, do they ever get to come up?
No, it's interesting. As the company's kind of grown over the last sort of 3 years, it's you have to be really careful not to lose the edge of making cool models. I can explain myself. Let's say Chris makes a model in Dystopian Wars, and he'll make that, and then Martin will probably then have to go make 10,000 of it, right?
Right.
So you take a look at the object and you think, okay, just how nightmarish is it going to be to make this?
Right.
Because it's because he has to take an object and then he has to the rapid prototype model comes back, it gets cleaned up, it goes into the master mold. We then create the submasters, and we have a very cool technique by which we get our submasters out and make those happen. And then those go into the production modes, and then Martin has to then do a calculation based on how rapidly we will go through lots of this object, which will then say, okay, do I make 30 modes, 50 modes, or 100 modes of it? Mm-hmm. And because one of the things we have to do is just to make sure that we don't destroy the molds when we run them, because we retire molds at a very rapid rate. I mean, you're probably looking at 30 to 50 times that a mold will get used, and then we'll get rid of it.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
The resin, because otherwise, you start generating defects, and we don't want that to continue. So we tend to shed the mold and basically redo it. So I think on an average day we'll make, we will repour 50 to 70 molds a day.
Wow.
Across the product range, so that's a constant cycle for us, because it kind of keeps the models true. A model's no good to us if we can only make 30 a day. We've got to make hundreds of thousands a day. So it's the sort of thing whereby it's a really important part at the beginning of the process to make sure that the guys talk about this. And every now and again we chance our arm with the model to see how far we can push it.
Right.
But sometimes we get it wrong. We have to go back to the drawing board. But again, you see, that's the beauty of digital. If we mess it up, we just start again.
There you go.
All right. Now, before we go, I'm just out of curiosity, Neil. Is there, I know as businesses grow, you upgrade your infrastructure and things like that. Is there I assume there are machines out there that will do things in the future, in the future of your company, that you look forward to sort of acquiring? Can you give us an example of a machine that's going to upgrade the whole Spartan game element that you don't have yet that maybe you want, or something new that's on the horizon technologically speaking?
Well, we got a new $100,000 rapid prototyping machine that we want.
Wow. So you do your own rapid. Now, last time we spoke a year ago, you had you were having that done in the U.S., right?
Yeah, we use that. We now use 4 companies because our demands on that are increasing. But yeah, no, we've highlighted some great technology that we want that's really sort of bleeding edge. So that's going to be quite cool. So we think that's going to allow us to play around with some new model types down the line. It's a constant investment in kind of new vacuum chambers, new sort of metal technology. We've got quite a lot of that now, and there are some new. Well, there are actually some quite interesting automated vacuum chambers that basically we're looking at, that we're going to be investing in, allow us to up our capacity, which allows us to basically make even that will allow the staff will be able to just basically double and if not treble what we make, which is because we are one of the big issues for a company like us is that as we evolve and change, it's you're constantly bringing in new people all the time. It's trying to find automated processes that we can buy to help us do that and sort of deal with that growth it's interesting for us to actually cope. So yes, there are things we're going to buy. I'm not going to go into too much detail on what we've done on those plans, because obviously
secret.
Oh yeah.
Well, I'd have to kill you if I told you.
Oh, that's no fun.
That would be bad. Yeah.
That would be really unfair of me.
Yeah.
And also you'd probably be bored by the answer. So yeah, it's if you can't stand still. You've got to keep moving. You've got to keep evolving. You've got to keep changing. Yeah, we're adding people. I don't know. I mean, we're constantly adding staff, which is interesting. So much for my retirement, huh?
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go. Well, on that note, hopefully everyone got a good feel there from Neil and on what the process is and how what the process is.
How many more times are you going to fit that
I can
one
milk
word
that.
in
I can
here?
milk that word, processes. What the processes are for all this miniature manufacturing. And I know you said boring, Neil, but I think it's really fascinating. I'm always curious. We spend so much time admiring and painting these models. I think it's great to kind of get a know for where these things come from, how they're made, and how much effort, time, and care goes into building them.
Absolutely.
Well, I hope I didn't bother you too much. I mean, there's probably a lot of companies out there kind of going, those guys are doing it so wrong. No, I think it's like all of these things. You build your own processes. Process I.
It worked fine.
Process I like that better.
We have our ways of making these things, and it works for us, and it scales for us, and it's cool. It's good fun.
Great.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Neil.
Thanks, Neil.
You're welcome, guys.
You in the market for deeper D6G intel? There's only one place to go for your contact in the off weeks. What you seek is located somewhere in the lost chapters. Go to the d6generation.com for further instructions.
Look, you got to stop smoking, man. You got to
It's
get
that
that.
time of year again. Everybody's got that springtime cold.
And so if you're homesick, what are you going to do but surf the net and look at thewarstore.com?
Yeah.
Because that is the coolest place to go for all of the latest games and all kinds of stuff online. If you do not have a friendly professional game store near you, the War Store is your friendly local professional game store.
Yeah, and the great thing about the War Store is indeed that whole window shopping thing. You head on over to their website, and it's just really well organized. The left-hand side there, all the great games organized by cool categories. Find the games you're interested in. It's a great way to think about. Let's say you're thinking, I'm always wanting to play a steampunk game. What are the choices? There's actually a steampunk category there. You can check it out, see what kind of miniature games or other games are available in that category. It's just a great way to kind of window shop, see what's out there, see what's available, see what's coming soon. Service is great. Don't be afraid to call them up. They've got extended hours from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. in Eastern Time. Give them a call. Say, hey, Neil, how's it going, boys? I got some questions about what you got. They'll be happy to walk you through it, talk to you about all the different ways that you can get the stuff from them, all the different products they have, even Games Workshop products.
Now, guess what they've got?
What?
Because guess what's sold out all over the place right now?
Dust Warfare.
That would be the Dust Warfare book and a lot of the Dust Warfare models.
Mm-hmm.
And these guys just got a whole new shipment of the Dust Tactics stuff ready to go. They've got everything. I'm scrolling down and I'm seeing nothing that says they don't got it.
Right. And
Okay.
the way you can know that kind of stuff is if you follow Vic the Viking over at the War Store on Twitter. They will tweet things like, just got more Dust Warfare and Tactics stuff in stock. And you'll go, ooh, and you can jump over there and order it before someone else snaps it out from under you.
Yep.
So definitely check that out. And also, don't forget the War Store weekend coming this fall. It's back this year. It's big. It's better than ever. So make sure you head on over to thewarstore.com and check out all the information on that as well.
Yep, it's going to be awesome.
This is Total Fangirl. Regular Jane most days, total fangirl when the moment strikes. Han shot first. Starbuck is a guy. And Lestat, now there's a vampire. Hello, everyone. This is Nicole, your Total Fangirl. You can follow me on Twitter at Nicole Wakeland and check out my blog, TotalFangirl.com. This week's shout out, Goblins, Drool, Fairies, Rule, a whimsical card game of rhyme and reason with 40 amazing illustrations. Pledge today at Kickstarter.com. This episode, I have a special guest with me, and I think it's kind of cool and we should be really nice to him because I know that he's a military dude, so he could probably kill me with his pinky, so everybody be really, really nice. I have Mark Christensen from Off Duty Gamers. Welcome, Mark.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm fine. It's just another busy day in Chicago.
In Chicago. See, you're far away. I'm off in New Hampshire. You're in the middle of things in Chicago.
Yeah, right, with the NATO summit. We have bizarre protesters.
That's right. You have all the excitement right now. So tell everybody a little bit what Off Duty Gamers is. Tell us about the site.
Well, Off Duty Gamers is, at its core, it's pretty much like many of the other sites out there. We do news and reviews for the video game industry, but the staff is entirely military, and the focus is on making sure that there's a good resource that looks at the industry in that military, well, I call it that weird, crazy military way that we all see it. So it has a comfort level and a support system, because the military members, even though there's a ton of military games out there, there really isn't anything addressing the military directly. So there's a lot of military stuff out there, but a lot of crazy 13-year-olds who want to yell at military guys to say we're nuts in a forum because we're arguing over how strong a weapon is. But they know better because they've played 300 hours of COD.
So now tell me, when you play games that are supposed to be realistic first-person shooter type games, do you find yourself often screaming that's completely impossible and unrealistic, and does it make you want to smash the game?
Let's see how to accurately answer that. That comes up a lot, actually. The problem is that it's a video game, and we try to temper everything with a sense of that there's never going to be a game that just captures what the military is. It's just, no one's job would be good in a video game and be perfect. So we just kind of look at that. We do get frustrated, and we tend to play with other military players only because we think the same way. Mm-hmm. But yes, there are times when someone runs into a room and they fire an RPG 20 feet away, or shoot it at your feet as you're all doing the bunny hop thing, and we just try not to, shake our heads and rage quit.
Is there?
So it's a delicate balance.
Now, is there any one particular game that seems to be at the top of your list that drives people batty with its inaccuracy when it's supposed to be accurate?
See, that is you threw in the accuracy word.
Uh-oh.
Most of the time, that's an important distinction, because there isn't really a game that's accurate. There's a realistic, authentic, I guess. I like authentic.
Okay.
Trying to keep the details and keep things in generally like that, but they're always going to be making things easy because it's a video game. So there's not going to be those challenges. I think... And I know there's going to be 1,000 fanboys that are going to fall on me. The Call of Duty series, while as shoot 'em up fun as it is, and we play it, let me say that first, Call of Duty drives us batty because it is the mechanic, and I blame this on like the engine and the mechanic and the way it's played, makes it so you just want to hold the trigger down and spin like a top. And that is probably the polar opposite of anything military. So I think if I had to point to one, that'd probably be top of the list.
That would be the top of the list for messing it up. What if you had to point to one that was at the top of the list for getting it right?
First-person shooters, well, without getting into Sims, because you get to Arma, Armed Assault, and you get into those Sims that people don't really enjoy. They're realistic and they're authentic, but they're not fun to play.
Right.
The one that's probably working really hard is to get it that close, but still doesn't hit it. I want to say that is probably the Medal of Honor series. They have a deep dedication to the details. Unfortunately, I think because of that, as much as they've tried, they have suffered a bit because it takes away from what the gamers, a lot of the majority of the gamers, that massive Call of Duty pool, expects to see.
Gotcha. Now, you've got, in addition to trying to provide a point of view for guys who are in the military or veterans in the military for playing their games, your mission is a little bit greater than that. You're trying to do a little something more with your website. Tell us a little bit about that, because that was pretty important.
Well, Off Duty Gamers, I realized early on that off-duty gamers had to do something. It couldn't just say, "Hey, we're going to be the military." Well, that's an important niche and a group of people that I respect, and they do a hell of a job. So I want to get them as much attention and care that I think they deserve. I knew that news and reviews, you could throw a rock in the video game industry online and hit 10 sites. So my thing is how do I go beyond that? And to go beyond that is in 3 pieces. It's the news and reviews, which everybody does. Ours just being a little bit more military flavored. The charity end, and that is to find ways to link up the video game industry with the guys out there in the field and veterans and get them some of the freebie stuff. I mean, these guys have done an incredible job. Why not get a game or a piece of tech or something like that, for them? So, most of the time, these guys in Afghanistan don't have time to get on these long-winded, crazy train ideas where to win something they have to be online all the time or certain times, and they just don't have that luxury. So I want to do that and marry those people up. And then the last thing is the military consulting. And what I'd like to see, the ultimate goal of military consulting is to create a database of military veterans that can go from the military life and help out the video game industry to beta test and give their feedback on, there's tons of military games, so why not let that knowledge work really well? And one of those major pieces is the guys coming back from war who are, the IED hits and they're missing arms and legs, but they've got incredible knowledge in their head. They have multiple years, some of them up to 20 years worth of knowledge in their head that's military, and they don't really know anything else. Mm-hmm. And to come back to the world and be 100% disabled, these are guys that don't sit well doing nothing, and they want to be productive. Mm-hmm. So what I want to try to do is marry up the game industry and these intense individuals and say, let's turn them into the next class of military technical consultants in groups and individuals and try to get these vets into jobs with the game industry.
I think that's a fantastic idea. That's why I wanted to have you guys on the show, because I know we have a lot of folks in the military that listen, and I thought, what a great idea to have something for you guys to vent and discuss things from your very unique point of view. But also, I really appreciate that you're trying to do something to give back to and to help the guys who've come back and have not had an easy road of it over there. So kudos to you for coming up with this idea and for running this site.
Hey, it's nothing but, for me, it's a bit of play. And I hope it goes further. But for those guys, this is really a testament to those people who serve, and my thank you. Even as a service member myself, I really stop and make sure that I thank people, and this is my way of kind of putting that thank you out a little wider.
Excellent. So tell everyone, Mark, again, where they can find out more about you, and a website, Twitter, whatever you'd like to give as a shout out.
Well, you can obviously find us at offdutygamers.com, and Twitter, our Twitter handle is offdutygamers. Facebook is facebook.com/offdutygamers. We're pretty much everywhere. Just look for Off Duty Gamers, and you'll run right into us.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mark.
Appreciate it.
Hey, and when I tour, I Geek Nation tour.
Hey, man, you're taking my intros now.
I am. I'm totally taking your intros. If you're looking for, let's say, it's rough. Things are hard out there. You need some place to go. I don't know. So get away. I don't know. Some place where they know your name.
No.
If you go on vacation with Geek Nation tours, though, by the end of your vacation, you will have a bunch of friends, and they will all know your name.
They will. And you know what's awesome now? Let's say you've wondered, what is a Geek Nation tour like? What would it be like to go on a Geek Nation tour? I've never been. I kind of want to vet the experience. Now, if you head on over to Geek Nation Tours and click on past tours,
yep,
you will see videos taken from
there's a couple videos here. Yeah. There's pictures. Yeah. You'll get a kind of an inside look at what's going on at some of these tours.
Yeah, exactly. It's a great way to see what the experience can be like. And then head on over and click on the upcoming tours to see what the new hotness is coming up on the near future here. Yeah. And it's not too late. I think you can still sneak in on the old Gen Con tour.
I think there is one room left.
I think there's one slot left. So if you have been thinking about it and you're like, I really would like to go, head on over, check
and
it
you
out.
thought it was okay because it was safe and you couldn't go, so you didn't have to make that decision. You're wrong.
The temptation is still there. Great, fantastic tour. So head on over to geeknationtours.com and see the world as only a geek can.
Ooh, very nice.
I'm Dan, your friendly professional game guide. Welcome back to When You Wish Upon a Game, where we discuss ways we can make the game industry better. Today's topic comes from the listener John Hook. John's question is, what about games that have proven to be popular and successful but are not being supported by the publisher? Specifically, I'm talking about Space Hulk by Games Workshop. The Warhammer 40k universe is so vast, and the history of Space Hulk in its previous incarnations has had expansions. So it's blowing my mind that GW does not support this game by 1, not making it a limited release, and 2, supporting it with expansions of new missions, floor tiles, and minis. Thanks for the question, John. There are a bunch of reasons why games that we think should be in print are not. We can all think of examples of games that seem like no-brainers that should be back in print. Car Wars, Dark Tower, Warhammer Quest, or how about Fireball Island? There are a bunch of reasons that prevent these games from being reprinted and supported. There could be licensing or rights issues, see Dune. There could be cost considerations, which is what's mired the Battlelore-based set in out-of-print land for so long. Or there could be a mismatch between the perceived demand in the gaming community and the perceived demand assessed by the publisher, who actually has the option and expense to reprint. Sometimes these classic games do come back. Recently, we saw WizWar come back after, how long, 15, 20 years? Too long. Certain companies even base the core thrust of their business model on reprinting deserving games. Examples include Valley Games and Stronghold Games. One of the best ways to lose money as a publisher is to reprint. Wait, what? Did he just say that publishers shouldn't reprint? No, but publishers have to be careful what they reprint, since more than one company has been broken and shuttered by overestimating demand, either on an initial printing or by reprinting and then having demand evaporate between printings when the game finally arrives back in stock 6 months to a year later. Most games should not be reprinted. There's not enough demand, they're not good enough, they're not franchisable. Now to the question of support. Why aren't these obvious game franchises set up to have continual support? I mean, Death Angel, the Space Hulk card game, has 4 expansions already since the relatively recent release a couple years ago by Fantasy Flight. So why doesn't Space Hulk proper have continual support? The answer is that sometimes it makes more short-term financial sense for companies to do relaunches as limited-time events. You pack all the sales into one short window and you get a whole bunch of cash all at once. If you're looking to generate as much interest in sales in the short term, you want something to be limited. This principle shows up all the time in fledgling publishers through Kickstarter as well. They get 500 to 1,000 pledges on Kickstarter and they assume, well, if that's what I got in a month or two, then when it actually comes out, I'll sell a ton more. In reality, the more the focus on limited edition items, expansions, and promos, the less successful the game will be long term, since all that hype is front-loaded. If you're a company that wants long-term sustainable interest, it's a much harder endeavor. Not only do you have to dedicate the resources to a big launch, but you have to dedicate them to ongoing design and development to support those expansions, upgrades, and the rest of the elements that go along with the game series. And keep in mind that during this whole time, for most game lines, sales will be declining, not increasing. Now, I've been arguing for a long time that many games would be more fun and enjoyable if you knew they were continuing enterprises. If I knew, for instance, that Warhammer Quest was coming out as a new edition, not limited, mind you, just a new edition, and that there would be new content each year, I'm far more likely to buy into it than if it's just a one-off limited edition. I want that continual experience just as I do with other media. I enjoy watching TV series because I can savor the joy of anticipation as much as the pleasure of experiencing the past and the present. I enjoy reading Dresden Files now because I know in the future I can look forward to reading more. As human beings, we're hardwired to appreciate routine and reliability, while at the same time we're hardwired to recognize scarcity. So we're pulled towards both things. We want things to be limited so that we feel special because we have them, and we also want things to have long-term support because we want our purchases reinforced. And game companies are in the same situation, except that they have to decide whether they're going to pay for the money and resources to go into that. In the end, you should focus on enjoying the games in the best format and continue to push for support of games in their ideal format. If you can have a ton of fun with Space Hulk, the limited edition, that is if you don't mind forking out the cash for it or if you already own it, and at the same time you can urge companies to move towards a sustainable, steady release schedule. That's what I see when I wish upon a game. How about you? Email me at wish@gamesalute.com. Thanks for listening and have fun playing.
And when I salute, game salute.
Game salute.
It had to be done. Why not? So our friends
You know what that is? That's a sound effect of me giving a crisp salute to gaming.
Right. So Game Salute is, as you know by now, for regular listeners, is a great place to go for the latest gaming news. And they also help out a lot of folks get their Kickstarter projects off the ground. They give that kind of support you need to make sure that you kind of factor in all those costs that are going to be involved with it with a Kickstarter project and give you that background of a company who's been involved with a lot of games.
Yeah, I believe they'll also hook you up with talent and all kinds of other things, and help you put together a team for your project.
Mm-hmm. And they are involved with some great games like Alien Frontiers and Island Fortress and some other great games. And also make sure your local store checks out GameStoreLocator.com, which is powered by Game Salute. It's a great way to find a great gaming store if you don't already have a great gaming store. And if you do have a great gaming store and they're not on that list, make sure you have them head on over there and sign up to be on the list so people can find them more easily and get information about all the great services that Game Salute has to offer.
Absolutely.
GameSalute.com.
You looking for news, reviews, and interviews? The D6 generation. It's groovy as groovy does define, baby. The D6 generation. Born to game. Oh, yeah.
Welcome back. And now we thought, Neil happens to design quite a few miniature war games. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Every now and then.
But he does. And when we have this segment we've run on the show several times called Mulling Mechanics, where we talk about some of our favorite mechanics in games, and often it's miniature war games. And we'd also received some emails recently. A listener just emailed me the other day and actually said, I was listening to some of your earlier shows, and it sounded like you really weren't into integrated turns, and now you are in integrated turns. Do you prefer you go, I go? What's the scoop with all that? And we were just talking about Dust Warfare and how Dust Warfare has mechanics in it that make it feel less sort of like I'm just waiting for you to take your turn. So we thought it'd be kind of a fun topic. So the title I came up with for this is Emulating Realistic Time Flow in a Game. What do you think of that, Neil? What do you think of that title, Neil?
Emulating the realistic time flow.
Well, I mean, when I heard the title, or when you emailed me the title, I mean, honestly, I couldn't sleep. I was so excited. And given that it's now actually 2:28 in the morning, then seriously, I can't sleep.
It is staggering how wickedly awesome this whole segment concept could be.
I mean, I need to get a life.
Hey, I don't know which is worse, to being someone who analyzes all this stuff or someone who makes it all. It could. So let's talk a little bit about what some of the things are we'd like to see in miniature war games about to make this stuff go on. So, what do we think about the concept of an integrated turn? Right. So there's really two different primary core mechanics in miniature war games today. There's the integrated turn where I would move a small group or one model or unit of models, and then you would move and activate a unit of models. Or there's the more, more common, but maybe not as much as it used to be, you go, I go, where I move my entire army or force or whatever you're going to call it, and then Craig would move his entire force. Now, keeping in mind that Spartan Games is mostly integrated turns, but putting that aside for a minute, Neil, what do you like about the integrated turn system? And maybe that's the way to go from it. Why did you pick integrated turns over maybe the more classic you go, I go for your primary games?
I think the brutal answer to that one would be that, if you sit and wait for your opponent to move everything, then it's like watching paint dry sometimes. Mm-hmm. And also, if you're not careful with the rule mechanics, then you end up getting destroyed because your opponent goes and just basically shatters everything on the table. And then, from my point of view, it boils down to obviously what you're trying to achieve with the game. When we originally built Uncharted Seas, it was about having fun. Mm-hmm. So the idea being was that you actually basically oscillated between the two players because if your opponent suddenly ages to the point of death while you wait for you to get to the end of moving your models, then that's no fun,
right?
So when you build a game that you're trying to have some fun with, then clearly you've got to speed the thing along a little bit, and everybody enjoys themselves. Mm-hmm. I can't stand games where you have this kind of abstracted mechanic whereby you don't always get to the end of your turn. So, yeah, because I mean, from my point of view, I kind of love the idea of I sit there and paint, 1,000 points of miniatures, and then play a game with a mechanic on the turns whereby I'm just about to move that fantastic 25-pound tank that I painted, and all of a sudden my opponent goes, "Oh no, turn over." So so it's a tricky one. It really, I mean, the simple preface on all of this, I suppose, is that you're never going to make all gamers happy when you choose how you build that mechanic structure for the turn. From our point of view, especially with Uncharted Seas and as we move forward, it was a choice that was made to attempt to keep it flowing that allowed people to not get bored.
Right.
That's what drove it. It was because I don't want to sit and watch somebody move their entire army.
Right.
I mean, if I'm going to do that, I might as well just go to work.
It's no longer fun.
Write another game.
Right. Craig,
go ahead. So I have no idea if that answered your question, but
no, you did, and I think that's really maybe the integrated turns is sort of the I don't want to use the word extreme, but the most or the least amount of downtime in a game, right? Because I'm just watching you move one unit, activate one unit, and then it's my turn to do the same. So I have very little time to worry about how long it's going to take you, except maybe if you're vacillating or which piece to move, really, right? Craig, what do you like about integrated turns, and how do you feel about that system?
Well, I like integrated turns for many of the reasons that Neil just said, because you feel like you're actually involved in the game every step of the way, as opposed to a game where the other guy is going and doing his whole thing and just kind of get pounded, and then in turn you're going to pound him. I like that. Were you about to say something sarcastic?
Me? I think you're misjudging me.
That's possible. I'm sure there was nothing untoward about to be.
I think I may have been coming out with something about how awesome what you were saying was.
Good. Well, that's good. It was awesome.
It was awesome. Wicked awesome.
Wicked awesome. It also, to me, feels like a more realistic way. I mean, it's still a game, so there's a level of abstraction, obviously, that's going to be there. But it's not like when a battle was fought in World War II, it's not like, okay, all of the Americans, you have a half hour, go. You get to shoot all your guns and move while the Germans just stand there. Mm-hmm. Okay, Germans, now you go. I mean, it wasn't like that. So I don't like the playing a game. I mean, I've enjoyed games that did that. But it was despite that mechanic, not because of it. I enjoy games where you can see the strategy of your opponent or your own strategy unfold activation by activation. So you can try to, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to do a refused flank over this way. Oh, he's going to try to stop me. And so I much prefer that more realistic element to the integrated turn type of mechanic. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I feel like the integrated activation mechanic.
I thought you were going to say McDonald's then.
I was going to say that was.
I am kind of hungry. I feel like sometimes that does have a tendency, especially when you have one opponent who deliberates a lot, and I think that the integrated activation stretches that out even more, as instead of watching you and humming and hawing and then moving all his stuff, he watches you and hums and haws and moves one thing. Then he watches you and then he hums and haws and then he moves another. So it almost multiplies the analysis paralysis by however many units are being activated. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the only. What's that?
You just beat those people to death. It's just easier.
That's I don't know how things are done in Glastonbury, my friend, but here in New Hampshire, that's illegal.
Right, that goes back to the New England thing.
In Glastonbury, it's not illegal because we just do it on an entirely different plane of existence.
Oh, nice.
It's very kind of Billy esoteric over here. So it's we don't really kill them. We just think them dead.
Right.
You think them dead?
Nice.
Oh, okay.
Now,
so that's in my opinion.
We had the Olympic torch here today. Don't just don't
Don't give you a hard time.
Don't upset Glastonbury, dude.
Did you get to see the torch?
No, I went to work. What do you think? I am stupid. My children went. They thought it was awesome.
It's cool.
Actually, I believe they thought it was wicked as well.
They probably did. Wicked awesome.
Yeah, no,
Or even jolly good. It was probably a jolly good
I
experience.
went to work. I had an awesome time.
Corruption
in
of
the office.
Queen's English.
No, I went to the office. Had an awesome time making wicked things.
Good. Well,
All right.
That's wicked good. So,
Okay.
and I like a lot the integrated turns for all the reasons you guys just outlined. I think the only place integrated turns gets a little tricky is if you like asymmetric battles, or if the battle becomes asymmetric, all of a sudden it gets can get a little weird, right? Because now your opponent's got many more models than you have, or vice versa, and now you get to move one, and then he gets to move his whole army. So I guess it's kind of like
you go, I go by a unit, and then all of a sudden they've got 3 or 4 more units.
Right, and then it just starts to feel a little weird, right? So
It depends where you want to set the rules, surely. Because
Right.
I mean, if you look at Uncharted season, I mean, here I am plugging my own game. But
no,
basically,
please do.
It's what you know.
Yeah, but it's a very simplistic engine in terms of how you basically move things around the table.
Mm-hmm.
Things like Dystopian Wars got more complicated because we have much more, much more great English, many more types of units.
That was awesome English. Awesome.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't wicked. But jumping back to the chat, so we've got a couple of new games under development. We've been spending a lot of time looking at the core elements of things like the activation system, and I mean, you guys have sort of very kindly sent me an idiot list of things to talk about on this, which is really sweet of you. Thank you. And within your list, actually, funnily enough, was a number of things that were really hot on the top. Was the things that we were discussing in terms of how we wanted the activation and turn system, because you can make you go, I go, or integrated turn systems work significantly differently, but then but what happens? You tend to clog the game system down.
Mm-hmm.
So you can add numerous levels of complexity to it, but at the end of the day, unless the game flows,
Right.
it starts to lose the fun factor. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't get to play many 5-hour war games anymore.
Right.
If I'm lucky, then I go to a war games club in Wells, in near where our office is on a Thursday night. Great bunch of guys, but by the time we've kind of got together, talk nonsense about what we're buying or doing or playing or whatever, we then suddenly sit down, start rolling dice to play a game. We've got a couple of hours if we're lucky.
Right.
And then it's time to pack it all down and go home, because chances are your wife or whoever will basically kind of be wondering why you're out again rolling dice with toy soldiers.
Right.
And basically, so it's that kind of trying to pick that target for where you want your game to go. I mean, at the end of the day, you're never going to simulate realism. Most of my family were in the military. My brother's in the military. My father's in the military. My uncles were all there, and they experienced the realism of war. I don't do that on the tabletop. So the thing I have to do is you attempt to create a game that is fun,
Right.
that takes on board the essence of what you're playing. That if you're playing Panzer Grenadiers in 1944, that you're attempting to simulate how they feel. If I'm playing Alexander the Great or Orcs in my game, or Dindrenzi in Firestorm, I'm attempting to grab a kind of that feel of how that works. I'm never really simulating realism, because because most of us, we can't simulate the concept of battlefield psychology and things like that. I mean, I could, if I wanted to, put 50 tables in the game and make it dull.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
So at the end of the day, you're always now. The point at which I do is what we do now, especially we take a game and we create the dullness. Which sounds an odd thing to say, because we take it incredibly granular, and then once we've got it incredibly granular, we then actually walk it back.
Well, that's
By
interesting.
absorbing that granularity into smooth. We hope that we get that. I mean, obviously it's a matter of perception as to whether you do or you don't, but it's the idea that if you take it totally right field and make it incredibly dull and slow and turgid and boring, you then start abstracting some of those numbers back in. You start looking at the overall picture and saying, well, okay, if I take that, that, and that, and convert that to just one number or one dice roll, can I actually speed the game up 20%?
Right.
By abstracting. But I think as long as you've gone the route with some of these things to try and figure out what you're trying to create,
right,
you can kind of pop back to a fun game. And it's got to be fun, because if it's not fun, people ain't going to play it.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's important.
And there ends my lecture.
No, that's great. I think I think it's really insightful. I think you're right. Now, let's talk a little bit about You Go, I Go. I know, integrated turns some great advantages we just talked about. Are there any advantages to You Go, I Go? I think one of the kind of the pieces about You Go, I Go that I do kind of like is that moment of like the whole charging your army forward at once. You get that sort of feeling of like I get to move my squads covering each other, at the same time. That sort of simultaneous. My whole army's kind of yelling charge at once. Is that really the only thing to You Go, I Go you like, or is there any other advantages to You Go, I Go we can think of?
It's got some cool points to it, I think. I mean, you can very much put in, if you're savvy about it, you can put in a very good command and control system into a You Go, I Go.
Yeah.
What you have to then take into account is you've then got to look at the concept of the reaction system that your opponent will have to what you are doing. I mean, I played a game the other day, which was we got a guy working on some historical stuff, and we were in the initial version of the rules that we were looking at. It was very much a You Go, I Go, but he built into it multiple levels of interrupt. And as a concept, it was fantastic. And on paper, it was a really cool concept, but it ground the game down because everything was reacting and then reacting, and it was and by the end of it, it was a bit like, oh, gosh,
right.
It's like, it's like, pass me a gun.
Well, at least you got that realism in there then.
Conceptually, it was very, very cool. And what you had what we then had to look at was saying, okay, we know what we are trying to achieve or what we want to achieve. How do we get that into a mechanic that means that my lower intestine doesn't actually throttle me?
Right. Well, I think that's a great point, Neil. And I think the way you make You Go, I Go, I love that you brought up command and control, because that's one of my favorite elements in larger, model count games. And I think you're right. I think You Go, I Go lets you work with that a little more than integrated does. One thing I find interesting too is I think you really do need to have some sort of interrupt system in You Go, I Go, so that it doesn't feel like, okay, I've made my moves and I'm going to pray now for the next 20 minutes that I didn't screw anything up as you destroy what I did, right? But I know exactly what you're talking about with the mechanics. If you think about the mechanics carefully, I remember when I first started playing Warhammer 40,000, one of the mechanics was Overwatch. And 40K is not the only game to have this. A lot of games have the concept of Overwatch, where you can either save, if a game has action points, you can save action points to your opponent's turn, or you can simply, as a move, say this unit is going on Overwatch or saving its action, and then if your opponent moves out in front of you, you can shoot it. And on paper, that is awesome, because it's like, it totally makes sense. I'm going to have this guy cover that alley, or he's going to cover that field of fire, and it's great. The problem is, it leads to a very dull game because no one wants to move. So the strategy is set up, get everybody on Overwatch, and just wait. Right?
Well, it's also nobody wants to move, and also you reach a point where you've got this constant record keeping either on the table or in your head of who did what, when, why, and where.
Right. And then how do you knock them off Overwatch?
And you end up you spend most of your time trying to remember, what did I do with that infantry unit?
Right.
And then your opponent says, well, you moved them, and I'm going to go, I did not.
I did not move
them. And it's like, no, I'm going to shoot you. And they go, no, but you shot last turn on Overwatch, remember? And you're going, really?
That's bullets.
And at that point, you may as well just go. You literally may as well just go to the bar and drink beer.
Right.
Because you're going to end up, because it's like, yawn.
Yeah, right.
I think I might have said that because it's now 2:45 in the morning, so I'm yawning. I mean, actually, but again, I think, and also you've got to kind of bring up to some extent, and I'm going to because I'm speaking. It's also the difference sometimes between the the club rules and the homegrown rules and the commercial set of rules.
Mm-hmm.
And I have learned a hell of a lot over the last few years about what the difference between what I think is a good set of rules and what is commercially valuable. Because you do something, and it doesn't matter how many play testers you throw at things sometimes, or how many people in your company do things. It's like suddenly somebody said, I'll get an email, and I'll go, I really did not think about doing that with that model.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes these things can break some of these structures and mechanics.
Right.
Because somebody comes at it, and they're just doing things, and sometimes I sit down and read and I go, why are they saying that? Because actually that's not how it works. But if you don't tell them it doesn't work that way,
right,
they'll try and do it, and it's like, shucks.
Right. It is. I think you're right. It's very tough, I think, to keep the core mechanics. And I think another thing we talked about a little bit when we were talking, we were interviewing Mac Martin about Dust Warfare, was the idea that, you make models that break rules, and then if you break rules with certain models, it becomes hard for the players to remember which rules are constantly in effect and which rules, go in and out. And so I think it all gets very complicated. And the more you can keep your rules sort of consistent throughout the game and simple and straightforward, the more you can keep the entire game operating within the parameters of those rules, it becomes easier to remember and follow, and you get less of those little weird moments.
Yeah, it's one of those things where if you can sort of keep the core engine incredibly simple and very fluid, and it just operates, then you can start adding other levels of complexity based on the unit or the figure. Which and that has been done by other companies before. I mean, the other options that you both basically get hold of a hammer, and when you do the Yugo idol, you hit each other's figures.
Nice. So, okay, that's certainly a good way to do it. And I think he totally threw me off with the hammer comment. I forgot where I was going. So right, but I think, and what's interesting about some of this stuff, and you brought up another good point earlier about keeping it fun. And a lot of players ask, and I think one of the things they can help resolve Yugo, for example, is, and you see this a lot in more current miniature war games, especially, is reducing the max ranges on the battlefield. You see a lot of people come in and say, well, why are your max ranges so short? If it was realistic, right, everything would shoot the length of the table. And I think a lot of the reasons is so that after you go, whether you're moving a unit or your entire army, you don't want it to be that now your entire army's in range and you make a few shots and all of a sudden you wipe out half your opponent's force before you even got the chance to move. So I think the reduction in ranges is it reduces realism in that range is not to scale, but it also increases realism in that in one motion, before you get to have any time occur on your side of the battlefield, your opponent cannot wipe out half your force, right? So I think those are some of the interesting ways people look at mechanics and kind of say, what can we do? What can we break to make it more enjoyable?
Yeah, that range is a fun one, isn't it? We've, like I said, I've alluded to the couple of new games that we got and some new rule sets, and in one of them in particular, we've very much shed the concept of ranges, and we've basically gone for kind of effective ranges and outside of effective ranges.
Oh wow!
But we've come up with what we think is a very fluid mechanic for making that quite jolly with the units. With Uncharted Seas, we kept it at that we have these 8-inch rule range bands basically.
Yep.
In the original rule set, they were we varied the ranges based on the different nations and the different weapon systems they were firing. So I think, if memory serves me, things like the Dragon Lords were sort of 8-inch, whereas the Iron Dwarves had 12-inch range bands. But those sorts of things are very doable. You start getting into how you then start balancing some of those things. It becomes a significantly more complicated thing to balance. I don't. It is irrelevant to some extent with a lot of these weapons, with that, because if you're playing a 28mm game, and you've got a rifle that's basically shooting out to 24 inches, and when in reality it should be probably shooting out to 24 feet or something.
Right.
But it just boils down to what sort of type of game you want to play. It's whether you're trying to play a game that is fun, so therefore you look beyond the abstract, or you're actually trying to really pretend that those little dudes on the table are real.
Well, that's
and once you get into that mindset, then the numbers become part of the mechanic, and you just ignore it.
right. Well, I think that's part of the fun. I mean, I think what people need to remember is that these aren't simulators; they're games. So as soon as you take the simulator out and make it a game, then you can do whatever you want. As long as the most important thing is, are you having fun? And is it, for a tactical person, is there a puzzle there to solve, in some kind of fun tactical way? And then for a storytelling person like Craig, is there something cinematic happening? Do you feel like, it's sort of like, can you get a willing suspension of disbelief? You're watching a movie, we all talk about how much we enjoyed John Carter. Totally a fake, nothing realistic about that film, but it was great fun because we were all into it, and it made sense in the framework of what they created. And the same true of the game. Yeah, you could argue that the effective range of a gun should be longer, and that the movement should be different, and that all this stuff. But in the framework of what the game designer has designed, is it fun? Is it cinematic? Are you into it? Are you imagining a story unfolding? Are things working the way they should expect in the framework of they've created? If that's all happening, I think it's fine, and realism has nothing to do with anything.
Yeah, I mean, my anecdotal one on that one is, I think Craig knows I'm a big World War II fan. I love World War II wargaming. It's kind of it's years ago. I mean, before Spartan Games, it was something stupidly obsessive with me. I mean, I own way too many tanks in way too many scales for one normal human on the planet, and my choice, my main choice is I'm a big fan of 20mm scale, so basically, which is of course very much a European thing. I also play a lot of 10mm World War II, and I started. We were working up to playing Kursk, or Prokhorovka, part of the tank battle, and I went. You can tell I'd retired at this point because I basically ended up building a 48-foot by 28-foot gaming area.
Wow.
With walkways between it, and I had 920mm tanks on there and about 3,000 or 4,000 figures and an aircraft, and it was just crazy. And it took many of us a whole 3 days to play it. And in the lead up to that game, I'd gone away and I'd researched, and in hindsight, it was stupid. I should have got a better hobby. I researched tanks, armor plating, armor penetration, the ranges of the weapons, the penetration of the weapons. I mean, I had these ridiculous spreadsheets, as was full of all of this information about if an 88mm on a target is hitting a T-34-76 at 700 yards, what's going to happen? And I had, was it multiple shots on target, second shot on target, had the vehicle moved, had the fire moved, was I, and it was, the whole thing was nonsense, because at the end of the day, it had nothing to do with whether 5 of my T-34s were going to just basically drive straight into a Tiger tank. And I'd built this in my head, and I'd worked it all out, and it was just, it was one of those processes where, and I don't know about you guys, but it was, you'd shoot at a target, and then I worked out, and I basically spent all of this time working out that I'd missed
a single shot, right?
It was like, yay,
right.
And then I'd worked it all out, and I'd hit the target, but I didn't penetrate. Yay again,
right?
And I'm looking at the table thinking, I've only got 900 tanks to go.
Yay!
And it was, and in hindsight, and I think, and I'll now apologise to those people who played the game. It was dull. It looked great.
Yeah.
It was a nightmare to pack it away. But I went too far with it. It was one of those things where, I wanted this realism, this thing, and I guess at the end of it, I worked out that I could count by working all the numbers out, but it was dull. It was really dull. So as I moved down the line to the next time I played a game of a similar nature, I then started abstracting it and actually started working out the numbers better. That was condensing the dice rolls and I also I'm not a huge fan of saving throws and things like that.
Right.
Well, you haven't said that. I've got shields in Firestorm, which is like a saving throw. So, hey, we're stuck in nonsense. Whatever. But it's this sort of I think you have to go through the pain to work out what the pain is of the mechanics to then try and then roll it back to what makes sense for the gamer.
Right.
So basically, I was a great big sad bloke who played a really big game of Prokhorovka and then broke myself in numbers.
Yeah, it's
worrying, isn't it?
It's definitely, yeah, and I think you're right. It's totally, the key is finding how far you can abstract it, keep it fast, and then, but also keep it enough realism, just enough realism in there that it works. And not so much, when I say realism here, I don't mean like, the gun must have the exact same range as a real gun, just that, if you're emulating something that, like a few tanks going up against a Tiger tank or something, that it feels about right, that the correct number of Allied tanks are required to kill a German Tiger.
Is gonna feel
as long as
like
that outcome
sense.
is roughly right, you can abstract the heck out of that and you're fine,
Right. And another issue with range that a lot of people don't get when they start complaining about the unhistorical aspect of range is that static element that you were talking about earlier, Russ, that comes into a game. If your ranges are too long, nobody's going to move. There will be no interaction. Everybody's going to deploy in firing positions, and then it's just going to be a question of rolling dice until one side dies or runs away, depending upon the system that you're using. And these shorter ranges require that you actually get in and you maneuver, and tactics become much more important. And these people on forums and such that are all up in arms over ranges and things like that, it's almost like a blind spot. What they're not seeing is the effect that those extended real life quote unquote ranges are going to have on that game, is that it's not going to be fun. Exactly what Neil was saying. So it's like this intersection of fun and realism, and you've got to find that point where it feels like it's making sense, but it's fun and moving and dynamic all at the same time. And that point is going to be different for different people.
Right.
And that's the key, is to try to.
And it's also not real.
Right, exactly. Right. That's the point, is that you're not ultimately doing a real battle.
It's not going to be real because your models don't actually dive out of the way when they get shot at. So it's
mine do with a hammer.
Oh, nice. And one thing we're talking about ranges, we mentioned earlier, and Neil, you brought up a great point about reaction systems. And I think reaction systems are a fantastic way, if you do them right, to make you go feel more dynamic and give you something to do while your opponent's moving. You can watch for it. And I think what we're starting to see, I've talked about before in Starship Troopers, we also see it now in Dust Warfare, and other games use it as well, like Infinity, is reaction systems, but you can only react if your opponent activates within a certain, generally fairly short range of your own units. And that way, it's not a constant, as Neil pointed out earlier, okay, now my entire army or 18 units can react to you moving. It's, are you within 12 inches of one of my guys? Okay, I got to consider a reaction option. So it really keeps it interesting when it gets close and nasty, like when hand-to-hand combat starts kicking in. But when you're far away, it reduces that analysis paralysis. If I'm far away from you, I'm out of range of all your models, I'm out of reaction distance of all your models, I can pretty much move without overanalyzing the situation. I'm looking at bigger pictures, like where do I need to be 2 turns from now, not how many units can shoot me if I move up from behind this tree,
I think reaction systems have to be a relatively simple mechanic, in as much as you've got to, they have to, I'm going to use the term. You've got to pay a price to use them. Mm-hmm. It shouldn't be just something that automatically happens. Mm-hmm. I think, and I can't really go into too much detail on some of the new bits we've built, but we've got we have a new tabletop skirmish game set of mechanics that we've been working on quite a while. That started up many moons ago, actually. Mm-hmm. And we think we've actually built an interesting reaction system there. But from there's almost a sort of I don't believe that you should ever just automatically get things. Mm-hmm. I think you have to even reaction systems. You have to think about gaining control of that part of the battle. So it's like an example would be you've got 3 tanks pointing at X, and you put them into Overwatch, for want of a better expression. Mm. And now I think that you need to have commanded those things into Overwatch. So you have to have some sort of system that allows you to expend X to make that happen through a very good command and control system. When you then come to utilize that in that suddenly your opponent drives past that point and you decide to open up with your things. Personally, I think that you've got to be able to, you have to then sort of dynamically to the game react to that and come out of Overwatch, shoot them. But I think you also have to have some concept of payback for breaking the flow of the game. You shouldn't just break the flow of the game. And also, but we've come up with an interesting. Well, again, I'm going to say that we've come up with another mechanic on top of how that whole strings together in some of our new stuff. So we're pretty excited that we've come up with some very fluid dynamics as to how we do command points and activation. I think but those are. No, because I'm kind of talking about something that people don't know about, which is kind of.
Well, I hear exactly what you're saying, and I think well, go ahead. I think I like what you're saying, and I think as Craig and I have been gooping over Dust Warfare lately, and one of the things one of the points you're making that I really agree with is the idea that if you use a reaction, it should have consequences, or it should cost you something. It shouldn't just be, hey, I get this free shot. And one of the things Dust Warfare does, which I think addresses that a little bit, and since the game's out, we can talk about it, and kind of maybe it's a good example of what you're saying, is this idea that if I haven't gone yet, and so, Neil, you move in a position where I can react to you. If I choose to react to you, I've got to put a reaction token on that unit. It means now that he can't react to anything else that turn, and it also means during my turn, I normally get 2 actions with every unit. Now I'm down to 1 action. So if I had planned in my turn to maybe use both my actions to move double speed, or if I'd planned in my turn to use both my actions to fire more accurately, by reacting to you, I'm getting a shot on you in your turn, but now I'm going to give up that advantage later. So I'm not really getting a free action. I'm just using a bit of my turn earlier. And if I react to you moving unit A near me, I'm not going to be able to react to you moving unit B to me. So I've got to make some tough choices, which gives you some tactical options as the player who's causing the reaction. You can decide, okay, maybe I'll move this unit I don't mind taking some damage with first, hopefully to draw him off of his ability to react to me, and then I can sneak by with my other unit. Or there's also rules about if I can suppress them, then they will lose the ability to react. So I think as long as there are tools in your tactical toolbox to disable reactions or to mitigate the reaction system, I think it makes the game feel very interactive and feels very much like your enemy is a living army you have to deal with. And in fact, it's not that their feet are nailed to the ground for the turn you move. It's actually, if I go near them, I got to deal with it.
No, I agree. I mean, I can't stand games where you're playing it and it's this idea that I'm actually going to now stand here while you're going to pulverize me because it's actually not my go.
Right.
And it's like, okay, should I survive? I'll get you next go. It's nonsense. Actually, on your list, actually, I mean, one of the things that interests me on the list of things that we were just going to discuss was this idea that you've got scale in there, which is an interesting one. So I'd kind of like to get your opinion on scales.
Yeah. So, let me ask you. So I want to talk about scale and how it affects to the feeling of maybe some of the realism and how does it affect the overall feel of the game. And I know, Neil, you've talked before in detail on that when we talked about, miniature manufacturing and stuff. You mentioned some ideas of different scales and how you like to work with them. How important do you think scale is to the overall design of a miniature war game, how it works and functions?
Well, I mean, lately one of the things that's been a bugbear, not a bugbear, but one of the things that I've been looking at in the company is that, I'm very lucky at the moment because the guys come up with a lot of, they do a lot of the design stuff, and I get to actually kind of wander around in some sort of fetid state of trying to think up new bits and pieces. So I have this fantastic freedom to actually sit there and kind of turn some things on their head. And one of the things that's been getting me lately is that I think that our customers, by that I mean Spartan Games customers, and to some extent any customers, I'm very much going against the idea that we're forcing them into the cul-de-sac and being forced into scale and things and dynamics of the game based on the scale of figures that we want to sell them. Mm-hmm. So Jim, who lives in New Orleans, who's got a 4 foot by 4 foot gaming space, and a budget that perhaps matches 10 mil.
Right.
I shouldn't negate him playing my game because he can't actually play on a 6 foot by 4 and 15 mil.
So do you think that mechanics can be independent of scale? I know, like in a game like Firestorm or Armada, they are. You're right.
Totally. I mean, mechanically, because what you do is it's a process by which you establish the core engine. What your scale becomes then is literally, it's like a personality sitting over the top of it. I mean, obviously, if you look at what we've got now in terms of our games, then Uncharted is 1/600 scale, Fantasy Naval, Dystopian was 1/1200, and we have the mechanics that link these things together because at that time we should have. But if you take a look at tabletop games, and I'm probably thinking more in terms of figure games. If you're playing a game with the concept of a combat platoon, right? That actually shouldn't become a problem in the core engine, whether you're playing 6 mil, 10 mil, 15 mil, 20, 28, whatever. That you should be able to mimic the core right the way through from top to bottom.
Now,
and then what you do is you then allow your customer to choose.
But wouldn't you expect? I guess it sounds cool, and I think but wouldn't for mechanics that would work great in a low model count, maybe large model game like big scale models. Like I'm thinking 28 millimeter, even bigger. Let's say you got really big infantry models or something. The mechanics for that, you'd want some heavily detailed maybe combat mechanics. But then as you scaled out and increased your model count at a smaller scale, so you get down to 10 millimeter, now you're at maybe the true company level or battalion level where you have lots and lots of guys. Wouldn't your mechanics have to get simpler so that the game wouldn't play longer? Or am I making sense?
But no, well, I mean, this is the joy of writing these sorts of things. Right. Of course, every one of us. Take a straw poll of 100 wargamers, and you'll probably get 100 answers.
Right.
But what I would say to you is that actually, if you start with a commonality of engine, then you can make it flow up and down the food chain. And again, what it then boils down to is it comes down to things like activation, Overwatch, reaction,
right?
Command and control, big time on command and control, and that will be dependent on. And so it's a type of game. Well, the expression I use in the office is it's a type of game you want to play,
right?
As a gamer,
yeah,
and that should dictate where you go up and down that. So, I've got. We have a number of ideas on how we do these things, but we have a game in the office at the moment that we've been building, which is literally I've had my guys build it in everything from 6 mil to 54 mil.
Wow,
and everything in the middle.
So that's what, and I'm trying to think if that's been done. I know that BattleTech sort of does this. BattleTech has different rule sets for different scales. And the core mechanics are essentially the same. You just roll less stuff. So when you're fighting like the original design scale of BattleTech, which is maybe 2 or 3 giant walking robots per side, there's a lot of detail there. You see which arm you get hit in when you shoot, and then you get the armor damage on that particular body part. But as you scale up and go to each model on the battlefield now represents a lance of a squad of mechs. Now you roll the same mechanics. The same to hit mechanics are the same. Your dice are the same, everything, but now you just worry about an overall number of damage points on a mech and not where you hit him. So it sort of scales up that way. Is that sort of the concept you're having, or do you think the mechanics can be almost identical all the way through?
I think you can keep them pretty close all the way through.
Wow, I'm curious to see how you guys are going to pull this up, because I think it's great. I just don't.
The other thing as well is, I'm talking about a game here where the figures are identical.
Yeah. Oh, I see. So it wouldn't really be. The model count may not shift then. It would just be different sizes.
To some extent. An example would be that let's say that we're gaming, right? We're building. Let's say we're building a game, and me and you decided to play a World War II game, okay? And your love is 10 mil,
right?
But my passion is 15 mil. or 20 mil actually in reality of it, and it's one of those things where it's this. Let's say that you like the particular World War II game I built. And by the way, before we go any further, I haven't built a World War II game.
Put it to bed now. Battlefront and the rest easy.
Yes, you will. Yeah, but it's sort of like, so you fall in love with the aesthetic that I've created. Okay, so you like my blah figures,
right?
But you're a 10 mil gamer, and you want to play battalion level 10 mil.
Mm-hmm.
But I've fallen in love with the aesthetic at 50 mil. Now I want to play company level. I'm talking about a commonality of engine that allows me to play battalion, company, right the way down to squads.
Yeah,
and also using figures that are literally identical.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's interesting. I can't wait to see how you guys pull that off. It sounds really fascinating.
And basically, the idea that that we may both play at company level, but you might play it using 10 mil figures. I might play it with 15. I might be a megalomaniac crazy man. I'm playing 28.
Right.
And the reality is the concept that I'm not forcing you to choose.
Right. That's really
it's your choice.
Well, I can't wait to see how you guys pull that off. That sounds really neat to me. And
no, I'm pulling it off. I'm just having a conversation. I'm not doing that.
No, of course not. It'd be cool. It'd be cool. I think, but I think most companies right now, right, they design their rules around the scale of their models, right? They say this is going to be an X scale game.
You have to do things like that.
Right.
You pick on what's successful and hot and exciting, what people play.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, there's no point doing it unless you're going to make money.
Right.
Unless you're a registered charity.
Right.
But then you tend to be very lonely when your wife divorces you.
Right. Right. Well, that's
logical conclusion.
It is. We're about out of time, but I think
you missed out morale. Sorry, you missed out morale.
Morale, yes. So
morale. Okay.
Yeah. Did you want to cover morale real quick?
My quick take on morale is that morale should be part of a game, but should not ruin a game.
I agree completely. I love that way to think of it. What are some morale systems you think ruin the game? What are some ways it can break the game?
Well, basically ones where you end up kind of like constantly checking after basically somebody fires a pop gun at a unit and you suddenly start putting a marker down to say that it's disheveled, disordered, broken, upset, fearful,
right.
Gone to ground, hiding under a bush.
Right.
And then it starts having a continual non-stop impact on that unit. And then when you fill the next roll of the dice, it goes to a cascading level where it kind of goes, oh my, these guys now are really scared.
Right.
Of course, at the end of it, it's like with a lot of these things, that they are supposed to be soldiers on the battlefield. They're not going to be wimps.
Right.
You've got to have morale impact, or maybe not. Maybe not even call it morale. You've got to have some sort of disintegration of the form of the form of the unit.
Battlefield degradation, right?
Basically, yeah. It's this whole thing. Now, in some systems, you tend to, and again, a lot of that can boil back down to the type of game you want to play, which is, do you like to play a game where you're taking bases off every turn, or do you want to play a game where you're recording the disintegration to the point where it just eventually vanishes?
Right.
And it's like, none of them are wrong. They're all right.
Right.
It's just when you're doing it, you just got to try and work out what is going to hit the customer base in that genre you're doing that will make them happy.
I agree. And I agree with you. My least favorite morale mechanics are the ones where, you take a morale check maybe earlier than you feel is right. And if you get a bad die roll, suddenly a key unit that you spent a lot of time painting up and or was a big chunk of your army percentage is now just off the table, or at worst, or at best still out for a turn or two in a 5 or 6 turn game, in which case now it's out for a quarter of the game because you made one bad die roll they had no control over. So I like morale. Yeah. Well, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that a process like that can suck.
Exactly. So I like them where they. I like them.
You know what it isn't is wicked awesome.
It's not wicked awesome.
It's not wicked awesome.
It's not jolly good either. It's bollocks is what it is.
It's wicked sucky.
It's bollocks or wicked sucky, as we say, right? So I prefer that like, as you suggested, that maybe there's some sort of gradual approach or an approach that you can definitely see and to have some kind of ability to get out of it, either through strong command and control or just, it can't really get you into trouble until enough degradation has occurred where you kind of deserve to be running away, that kind of situation. So, Craig, what do you think about morale?
Yeah, command and control is an interesting one because, that is an important one, and that is literally down to whether you're playing a game where your officers and sergeants are impacting the command and control of a platoon.
Right.
Or whether in actual fact, it's a science fiction commander in space.
Right.
Commanding battalions of troops attacking blah.
Right.
And it's you've still got that process by which they're all commanded. It's just you've got to have command and control in there.
Right.
Sorry, it's
I'm with you. I think we need command and control.
I'm starting to waffle now, aren't I?
No, that's okay. Well, we're gonna wrap.
Neat.
It's awesome that you're totally right, Neil. And we're just running out of time, so we got to wrap. But I think it's been a great topic, and you did a good job bringing together a lot of great considerations for mechanics. What do you think, Craig?
I think it's been great. It's a very interesting point of view from the guy who is actually making rules. So that's neat.
Exactly.
Also, a neat twist to the mulling mechanics element. And I agree with everything Neil says.
So nice. So Neil,
wicked.
So Neil, it was wicked awesome of you to join us today.
Yes,
we really appreciate
thank you
it.
for taking all of this time so early in the morning.
Yes.
I don't. It was fantabulous. Thank you.
Fantabulous. And Neil, if people want to find out more information about you or Spartan Games, where should they head?
I
believe he's passed out.
I was trying to come up with a witty retort, and I couldn't. I failed. I don't know, www.samaritans.com or something.
.co.uk.
Yeah,
the beauty is I don't need to tell you because Craig plugged it so well earlier in the evening.
Right.
That actually, it's. Come to the website and join in. And if you have any issues with anything, then please don't email me. Email one of my colleagues because they're much smarter than me. I'm sorry.
No worries.
You get a smarter answer out of the guys than me. That's for certain.
Well, Neil, thanks again so much for staying up so late or early, as the case may be.
No, guys, it's always a pleasure chatting.
All right, take care now, Neil.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
This edition of Jever Notice is brought to you by Kaiju City. Control titanic skyscraper toppling monsters or the city itself. Pick a side and fight for the fate of Kaiju City. Coming soon. Do you ever notice how much can be accomplished when good people put their minds to it? I mean, not just in gaming, but in life. There are all sorts of things from charity events to excellent companies to organizations that promote countless different activities that all depend upon the energy and commitment of excited people. Recently, one of my students won the National Gatorade Girls Soccer Player of the Year award. It sounds cool, but you don't really get it, or at least I didn't really get it, until the ESPN camera crews descend upon the school and the whole town shuts down. Now, I knew Morgan was a big deal in soccer. She's been on the under-17 U.S. team for several years now and is currently the captain and will be leading the team in Azerbaijan for the World Cup U17 finals, which is pretty impressive, I guess. She's played all over the world and is constantly missing school to attend training camps all over the place, but she works ridiculously hard to catch up when she comes back. And then there she was, on our local stage, my little stage where we do our plays, newly all decked out in a fortune in Gatorade paraphernalia, and they were going through her many achievements, and they got to a charity she herself had created several years ago called the Kicks for Cans Initiative, and it sets up soccer clinics that are paid for through food donations that go to local charities. And that's what floored me, because this girl who maintains excellent grades, plays on all these different teams, even plays on our football team as the place kicker, had made the time to form and serve this amazing charity. And that sort of fits in with what I've been thinking about and what's been cycling through my brain for the past few weeks, albeit on a much larger and more selfless level than I was thinking. I was thinking, watching several forums online, about all the cool things gamers do for each other. And I'm talking about not only the little things, and thanks again to Curtis and Les for offering me those awesome patches for Dust, but major projects that add to everyone's enjoyment. I mean, think of all those player aids that get made for nothing by fans of the games. Look at all those quick reference sheets over at headlesshollow.com. They're priceless, literally. I mean, they're awesome, and they don't cost anything. And that's fairly typical of the gaming community. There's always someone out there excited and energized about sharing their ideas and their enthusiasm with other gamers. You don't have to look far for any even remotely popular game for fan-based supplements, including missions, entire campaigns, XCamp, and pictures, lots and lots of pictures. Gamers in general can be a vastly excited and excitable bunch, and when that energy is focused towards positive ends, it can make a world of difference in gaming and outside of gaming when you talk about extra life and things like that. In fact, I'd go so far as to say the gaming community needs this type of value-adding behavior for us all to get the most out of our hobby. When we were playing Babylon 5: A Call to Arms, for example, I wouldn't play until our friend Jeremy, the Sherpa, made me stat cards for my ships, and I loved them. And then when we were playing Firestorm Armada regularly, he went and did them for that game too. Now, if you check the Spartan forums now, you'll see several different types of cards for all the different games made by fans that make the game quicker and easier. And the same thing goes for the new Dust Warfare and their very active forum. Rodney of Watch It Played YouTube channel fame made those awesome cards, or is making them, an area where FFG truly stumbled on their own and left a massive gap in the support needed to play the game. And his cards rock. I mean, I helped a tiny little bit and managed to screw up even that much, but that's just yet another example of an excited fan with some skills volunteering his time and their time, to be fair, as many of the guys on the forum are stepping up and helping with those cards now, to really bring a new level of enjoyment and value to that game. But here's the dig, and you knew there had to be a dig coming, right? In management, they have a theory. And that theory states, well, they have many theories, but this one states that for every truly negative person on your team, you require the equivalent work of 2 positive people to offset it in their influence on the project. And I don't mean guys that are like, they don't like some things. Like, you likewise can't succeed when you've got a bunch of mealy-mouthed yes-men flanking you all the time. But I mean guys who don't like anything. Nothing is good enough. There are always flaws, and the flaws are always referenced in wide, loud, and usually angry terms. I have my own theory after watching folks for the last 4 decades or so, and this goes for anything in life, not just gaming. There are folks out there for whom perfection is the enemy of good. Basically, that means that to these folks, if it's not perfect, it's not good at all. If there are any perceived flaws, these people will decry the efforts to the skies, unsatisfied with anything to do with it. That really bugs me for many reasons. Perfection is definitely something to be strived for, no doubt, but it's also something that can almost never be achieved. Perfection requires a mix of skill and effort and luck that can never be depended upon regularly. And so we imperfect humans struggle along as best we can, and the vast majority of us enjoy the good things in life rather than being miserable because nothing lives up to the perfect. But there are folks out there who don't do that. Folks out there who whine and moan over every little imperfection of almost any game or effort because it's not perfect. And those people really annoy me. They annoy me for many reasons, but one of them is because they have their built-in defense. Well, if you don't tell people what's wrong, how are they going to fix it? And their righteousness is so ingrained into the mindset that there's no convincing them that there's a difference between, wow, this is good, did you think about doing this part differently? And this is the worst example of its kind ever to disgrace the face of the planet. What idiot thought this was okay to head out the door? Online and in gaming, these people are particularly odious. They're rare, thankfully, but man, are they loud. They will invariably post huge walls of text that prove how bad things are and what the problems are and how virtuous they are for seeking to make the games better for everyone else. Anyone who contradicts them or disagrees must be a 15-year-old fanboy ignorant of the greatness that is available in other games. Of course, that begs the question, why isn't this guy posting on the forums for those other games? Oh, that's right. He's here trying to save the rest of us from ourselves. A couple of phenomena that I've noticed over the last 10 years or so are particularly intriguing to me within this context of these negative individuals. The sanctity of the negative. If you're against something, then you're an adult with a reasoned opinion. But if you like it, if you're for it, well, then clearly you're a child. And then you have the authority of years. This one really gets me. I've been playing games since Gary Gygax wore knee pants, so listen to me. I know many idiots who are seasoned citizens, and I know many young people who are smart and educated and reasoned. So why on earth should the fact that you've been playing war games since H.G. Wells knocked over his first lead miniature mean anything to me if your opinions are closed-minded and idiotic? I'm going to stop there because I've gone way too long, and I want to bring it back to the positive. I would highly recommend everyone listening who has ever had an idea of something that they could do to make their own gaming better to do it. Not only do it, but then share it and make the whole industry a little brighter with your contributions. And if you have any questions, check out forums. I mean, I can't think of a single mainline game nowadays that doesn't have a forum somewhere. And there are always general gaming places like dakadaka.com or Board Game Geek where folks from all over the gaming walks of life show up to share their views. And that's about all I've got to say. Don't be one of those negative people. Look for the positive. Try to see the good in things. And then work from within to change it if you want to change it. And if you don't want to change it, you just hate it, go somewhere else to talk to people about things that you do like. Be positive and make the whole world a positive place. Thanks for listening, and good night.
Achievement unlocked! You've made it to the end of another D6 Generation episode, the podcast whose humor has universally been acclaimed as not too horrible. Please let us know what you thought of the show by either emailing us at info@the d6generation.com or by posting in our official D6G episode thread at the top of the DACA Discussions Forum on dakadaka.com. If for some inexplicable reason you actually enjoyed this show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. See you in 2 weeks. Thanks for listening, and happy gaming.
The theme from Total Fangirl comes from the soundtrack of The Last Night on Earth, the zombie game, courtesy of Flying Frog Productions, and is a composition of Mary Beth Magalanes.
Neil, can you give us something pithy and short?
Well, I could do, but no.
Nice. All right, good.